Yemo, Yemo, are you all right? Get up quickly. The class is about to start. This is Merciless Ice's class. Hurry up and get up. A concerned voice called near Yemo's ear. Yemo had a very strange feeling. Yemo, Yemo, are you all right? Get up quickly. The class is about to start. This is Merciless Ice's class. Hurry up and get up. A concerned voice called near Yemo's ear. Yemo had a very strange feeling. This idiot, he probably doesn't have the face to see anyone. That's why he's covering up his face. Another voice was making fun of him, but now, Yemo was wide awake. Yemo looked around him, confused. There was no one he knew, and he was surrounded by a sea of unfamiliar faces. Seeing Yemo's lost face, there was another roar of laughter. It was quite obvious that all these laughs were directed at him. Seeing that everyone around him was laughing at him, he didn't dare to question anything for the time being, but instead could only be vigilant in case someone attacked him. Yemo looked at the student sitting beside him. He was the only one who refrained from laughing at him, and it was the same person who woke him up. Where am I? Who are you? Why does this look like a classroom? Yemo asked in astonishment. Haha, there was another roar of laughter. Yemo, I think you're so angry that you have become dumb. Do you think Yin Yin is someone you can write a love letter to? It was okay if you were still in the Yi family, but now, you're not. Be careful next time. The next class is English, and the teacher is Yun Bing One. Don't be caught by her, Yemo's desk mate whispered in his ear. The voice was so low that only Yemo could hear it. It was evident that he was anxious too. I really can't remember. My headache was awful just then, and I forgot a lot of things, Yemo helplessly said. His deskmate sighed. Of course, he wouldn't believe that Yemo would forget everything in such a short moment. He thought that it was just that Yemo needed to save his face and that he still hadn't realized that he was no longer Yemo of the Yi family. Suddenly, Yemo felt a sudden pulse of pain in his head. He remembered that he was making the energy-returning pill with his master Luoing. Then those bastards from the Western Flow Group attacked, and there were all sorts of explosions and battles. After that, his master carried him and used an escape paper charm. But how could he appear here? Was this still the Luoyu continent? Moreover, he was sitting here safe and sound, but what happened to his master? His master was only 3 years older than him, and the reason that the Western Flow Group attacked them was that his master was too gorgeous. The young master of the Western Flow Group wanted to marry his beautiful master, but alas, he was rejected. This had been the cause of their fight. If his master were in the hands of the Western Flow Group, then the consequences would be unimaginable. Thinking about this, Yemo could no longer contain the worry in his heart and suddenly stood up. What is it? Don't you know the bell for the class has rung? A cold-faced young woman walked up to the class podium with a few books between her arms. She scanned the students laughing in the class with a chilling gaze, and immediately after, the laughter dissipated. Everyone knew this English class was run by Yun Bing, and what she hated the most was students creating commotions. If she had her eyes on a student, then it was safe to say that nothing good would come out of that. Yemo had already felt that something was not right. Although he could understand these words, the language was obviously not what he had used before. Was this no longer Luoyu continent? Frowning, Yemo wanted to know more. Another wave of a headache came, and he suddenly recalled all sorts of information. Yemo was a member of the 3rd generation of the Yi family. His father, Yi Wentian, had passed away 2 years before, and he had no recollection of his mother. After his father had passed away, he was exiled from the Yi family. This was because he was not Yi Wentian's biological son, according to a DNA test conducted in the aftermath of his death. However, he still remembered his little sister Yi Ling and younger brother Yi Zifeng. Alas, they were both not of the same mother as him, but of the same father. 3 years ago, his father seemed to foresee the eventual exile of Yemo, so he asked his own father to request for a marriage with the Ning family. Since Yi Wentian had full knowledge of his poor health, he wanted to find a backup for Yemo. Thus, he found the Ning family of Beijing. Being able to have a marriage with the top 5 families of China, the Ning family was, of course, very glad to oblige. The head of the Ning family betrothed his granddaughter to Yemo. 3 years ago, Ning Qingxue, who was only 21 at the time, was already the prettiest lady in the entire capital. Meanwhile, Emo became the disaster of the Yi family, and the reason was simple. In one hospital checkup, Emo was discovered to be naturally impotent. In other words, he couldn't reproduce. Although the Yi family tried very hard to conceal this matter, it seemed that all the people in the capital knew it in only one night. One of the 5 greatest families of China, the Yi family had a naturally impotent member, which made the Yi family losing a considerable amount of honor. Arg, after his memory recovered to this point, Emo suddenly shouted in agony and stood up. He almost took his pants down to have a look immediately. He understood that he could have possibly reincarnated on someone also called Emo, but the worst was that he actually couldn't have S*X. He'd rather die than be like this. You? What is your name, and how dare you yell in my class? Come to my office after the class. The pretty teacher was interrupted by Emo's scream, causing her to become livid. All the other students in the class sniggered and smothered their laughs. Making a university student routinely visit her office was something only this English teacher could do. Furthermore, one had to go because their marks were at stake. Emo dejectedly sat down. Although he wasn't too sure about the warring amongst prominent families, he knew that he was probably kicked out of the Yi family because he was naturally impotent, rather than his lack of a biological link with his father. Plus, who knew what actually happened to the data from the DNA analysis? Emo wasn't concerned about being exiled from the Yi family. He didn't care about that at all. What he cared about was his natural impotence and how his master, Luoying, was doing. But now, he also understood why the students in his class were laughing at him. It was because the soul who owned this body before was already kicked out of the Yi family but still wanted to go for the hottest girl in the class, Yin Yin. In the end, she stuck his love letter on the blackboard, stood on the podium looking at him contemptuously and said, "Young Master Yi, would you be able to get it on in bed with me?" So this was the reason the whole class laughed at him. The original Emo probably died due to the humiliation. Making a naturally impotent person go in bed with her, this was like smacking him in the face. Although that person wasn't actually him, Emo's face still sank. He looked at the girl called Yin Yin. She was very curvaceous. However, that B*TCHY act made Emo feel really repulsed. He really couldn't understand why the original owner of this body wanted to pursue her. Finally, after thinking about it for a moment, Emo realized that, when Emo was still in the Yi family, everyone was trying to suck up to him, including that girl called Yin Yin. However, after the news of him being naturally impotent was spread out, he felt that he lost face and wanted to find a girlfriend. Unfortunately, he didn't think that the girl that sucked up to him so much before would treat him like this. Under such humiliation, he fainted, allowing the current Emo to reincarnate. He was actually reborn into a place like this. He couldn't understand a word the beautiful teacher was saying on the podium. He organized his memory, and his face sank. Leaving his impotence problem aside, the fact that the spirit chi of heaven and earth was so scarce here was something he couldn't accept. This wasn't a place for cultivation. He wondered if he really was going to die on this place called Earth. It no longer mattered if he still went to this university. The most important thing was to understand his predicament. His impotence had undermined the reputation of the Yi family. Although he was kicked out, who knew if he would be suddenly killed? Perhaps other things happened which resulted in him being kicked out. Right now, was he even safe? At the end of the class, Emo rushed out of school in a hurry, neglecting his trip to the teacher's office. He needed to find a place to check himself and see if he was really naturally impotent. The good thing was, there were quite a lot of alleyways surrounding High University. Emo rushed into a deserted alley and hurried to pull down his pants. His doodle was indeed tiny, but Emo wasn't disappointed just because his doodle was small. Instead, he let out a real sigh of relief. He wasn't naturally impotent. It was because his doodle was too small that one of the meridians had been blocked from developing, creating this fake impotence. Before he cultivated on the Luoyu continent, he was a master in the medical field, so he knew what the situation was with only one glance. Unfortunately, it was impossible to break open this blocked meridian with the current technology on Earth. However, this wouldn't be hard for Emo. Although he didn't possess the ability to open the blocked meridian just yet, as long as he reached the third stage of Qi gathering, this meridian would open itself. However, Yemo was beginning to get disappointed again. This was because the spirit chi was so scarce on Earth, and it would be a daunting task for him to reach the third stage of chi gathering. In fact, he might not even be able to approach it his entire life. That way, his impotence would never change. After sighing, Yemo just wanted to pull up his pants. Suddenly, a scream shook his heart. Scumbag! This was definitely a high-pitched woman's voice, and it sounded right in front of Yemo. Just then, Yemo was only focused on checking his doodle, so he forgot to look around at the situation. He didn't think that this alley was connected to anything. It was just that the turn was further in, and he couldn't see it. Yemo wasn't a nudist. More than that, he also didn't have any assets to exhibit. He hurriedly pulled up his pants and was about to run away. Yemo, is that you? After this woman had yelled, she used another very surprised tone and asked. She obviously knew Yemo won. Yunbing means ice cloud. Chapter 1 Part 1. Chapter 1 Part 1 is my doodle all right? Yemo, are you all right? Get up quickly. The class is about to start. This is Merciless Ice's class. Hurry up and get up. A worried voice sounded by Yemo's ear. Yemo had a very strange feeling. This idiot, he probably doesn't have the face to see anyone. That's why he's covering up his face. Another voice sounded by his ear, but now, Yemo was awake. Yemo looked around him confused. There was no one he knew. They were all unknown faces. Seeing Yemo's lost face, there was another roaring of laughter. It was quite obvious that all these laughs were directed to him. Seeing that everyone around him was laughing at him, he didn't dare to ask for the time being and could only be vigilant himself in case someone attacked him. He looked at the student sitting beside him. It seemed that only he didn't laugh at him, and it was Hai who woke him up. Where am I? Who are you? Why does this look like a classroom? Yemo asked subconsciously in astonishment. Haha. There was another roaring of laughter. Yemo, I think you're so angry that you have become dumb. Do you think Yin Yin is someone you can write a love letter to? It was okay if you were still in the Yi family, but now, you're not. Be careful next time. The next class is English class, and the teacher is Yunbing. Don't be caught by her. Yemo's desk mate whispered in his ear. The voice was so low that only Yemo could hear. It could be seen that he was very worried too. TL note. Yunbing means cloud ice. I really can't remember. My headache was really bad just then and I forgot about a lot of things. Yemo said helplessly. His deskmate sighed. Of course he wouldn't believe that Yemo would forget everything in such short moment. It was just that Yemo needed to save his face. Yemo still hadn't realized the reality yet. He was no longer Yemo of the Yi family. Yemo's head had a sudden pulse of pain. He remembered that he and his master Luoing was making the energy-returning pill. Then, those bastards from the Western Flow group attacked. Then, there were all sorts of explosions and battles. He remembered that his master carried him and used the escape paper charm. But how could he appear here? Was this still the Luoyu continent? By the way, he is still sitting here, but what of his master? His master was only 3 years older than him. Moreover, the reason that the Western Flow group attacked them was because his master was too beautiful. The young master of the Western Flow group wanted to marry his beautiful master, but his master rejected him. Then, all that happened. If his master was in the hands of the Western Flow group, then the consequences would be unimaginable. Thinking about this, Yemo could no longer hold the worry in his heart and suddenly stood up. What is it? Don't you know the bell for class has rung? A cold-faced young married woman walked up to the class podium with a few books between her arms. She scanned the students laughing in the class coldly, and immediately, the laughs quietened down. Everyone knew this English class was run by Yunbing, and what she hated the most was students creating uproars. If she had her eyes on you, then definitely no good would come out of that. Yemo had already felt that something was not right. Although he could understand these words, the language was obviously not what he had used before. Was this no longer Luoyu continent? Frowning his eyebrows, Yemo wanted to know more. Another pulse of headache came, and all sorts of information were remembered by him. Yemo, a member of the third generation of the Yi family. His father Yi Wentian had passed away 2 years ago. He never had any impression of his mother. After his father passed away, he was completely kicked out of the Yi family. The reason was because he wasn't Yi Wentian's biological son. More specifically, after Yimo's father died, Yimo's blood was DNA tested and was said to not be of the Yi family. This caused him to be kicked out of the Yi family. However, he still has a little sister Yiling and a little brother Yi Zifeng. However, they were both not of the same mother as him but of the same father. 3 years ago, his father seemed to knew that he owed that Yi Yimo and asked his own father to request for a marriage with the Ning family. Yi Wentian quite possibly knew that his body was bad, and so he wanted to find a backup for Yi Yimo. Thus, he found the Ning family of Beijing. Being able to have a marriage with the top 5 families of China, the Ning family was of course very glad to do so. The head of the Ning family betrothed his granddaughter to Yi Yimo. 3 years since then, Ning Qingxue, who was only 21, was already the prettiest lady in the entire capital. Meanwhile, Yi Yimo became the disaster of the Yi family. The reason was simple. In one hospital checkup, Yi Yimo was discovered to be naturally impotent. In other words, he couldn't reproduce. Although the Yi family tried very hard to cover this fact, it seemed that all the people in the capital knew in one night. One of the 5 greatest families of China, the Yi family had a naturally impotent member. The Yi family lost the honor on this big time. Chapter 1 Part 2. Chapter 1 Part 2 is my doodle alright? Part arg. After his memory recovered to this point, Yi Yimo suddenly screamed and stood up. He almost took his pants down to have a look immediately. He understood that he could have possibly reincarnated on someone also called Yi Yimo, but he actually couldn't have sex. He'd rather die than be like this. You, what is your name? What are you yelling for in class? After class, come to my office. The pretty teacher who was just having class was interrupted by Yi Yimo's scream, and her face wasn't looking good. All the other students in the class laughed on the inside. Always making a university student going to the office. This was something probably only this English teacher could do. And you must go, your marks were in hands. Yi Yimo sat down dejectedly. Although he wasn't too sure about the fighting inside big families, he knew he was probably kicked out of the Yi family because he was naturally impotent. It might not have been because he wasn't someone of the Yi family. Plus, who knew what happened to the data from the DNA analysis? Yi Yimo wasn't concerned about him getting kicked out of the Yi family. He didn't care about that at all. What he cared about was his natural impotence and how his master Luoing was doing. But now, he also understood why the students in his class were laughing at him. It was because the soul who owned this body before was already kicked out of the Yi family but still wanted to go for the hottest girl in the class, Yin Yin. In the end, she stuck his love letter on the blackboard and stood on the podium looking at him contemptuously and said, "Young Master Yi, are you able to go in bed with me?" So this was it. No wonder the whole class laughed. The original Yi Yimo probably died due to the humiliation. Making a naturally impotent person go in bed with her. This was like smacking him in the face. Although that person wasn't him, Yi Yimo's face still sunk. He looked at the girl called Yin Yin. She was very curvaceous. However, that bitchy act made Yi Yimo feel really repulsed. He really couldn't understand why the original owner of this body wanted to pursue her. However, Yi Yimo also quickly knew the reason. It was because when Yi Yimo was still in the Yi family, everyone was trying to suck up to him, including that girl called Yin Yin. After news of him being naturally impotent was spread out, he felt he lost face and wanted to find a girlfriend. However, he didn't think that the girl that sucked up to him so much before would treat him like this. Under such humiliation, he fainted, allowing the current Yi Yimo to reincarnate. He was actually reborn into a place like this. He couldn't understand a word the beautiful teacher was talking on the podium. Even if he could understand, Yi Yimo wouldn't listen to it. Him being naturally impotent was something he could not accept. Instead of being reincarnated like this, he would rather not be reincarnated at all. He organized his memory. Yi Yimo's face was sunken. Leaving his impotence problem aside for now, the fact that the spirit chi of the heavens and earths was so scarce here was something he couldn't accept. This wasn't a place for cultivation. Was he really going to die on this place called Earth? It no longer mattered if he still went to this uni. The most important thing was to understand his predicament. His impotence had undermined the reputation of the Yi family. Although he was kicked out, who knew if he would be suddenly killed? Perhaps there were other things that happened which resulted in him being kicked out. Right now, was he safe? After the end of class bell rung, the first thing Emo did was of course not going to that pretty teacher's office, but rushing out of the school in a hurry. He needed to find a place to check out his doodle and see if it was really naturally impotent. Good thing was that there weren't much other things near Ning Hai University, but there were quite a lot of alleyways. Emo rushed into a deserted alley and hurried to pull down his pants. His doodle was indeed very small, but Emo wasn't disappointed just because his doodle was small. Instead, he let out a true sigh of relief. He wasn't naturally impotent. It was because his doodle was too small that one of the meridians had been blocked from development, creating this fake impotence. Before he cultivated on the Luoyu continent, he was a master in the medical field. He knew what the situation was with one glance. However, even so, it was impossible to break open this blocking in his meridian with the current technology on Earth. However, this wouldn't be hard for Emo. Although he doesn't have the ability to open the blocked meridian now and make this doodle more massive, as long as he reached the third stage of Qi gathering, this meridian would open by itself. However, Emo was beginning to get disappointed again. This was because that with the spirit Qi being so scarce on Earth, it would be a huge task for him to reach third stage of Qi gathering. Perhaps he wouldn't be able to reach it his entire life. That way, he was in a sense still naturally impotent. After sighing, Emo just wanted to pull up his pants. Suddenly, a scream shook his heart. Scumbag. This was definitely a high-pitched woman's voice, and it sounded right in front of Emo. Emo was only focused on checking his doodle, just then that he forgot to look around at the situation. He didn't think this alley was connected. It was just that the turn was further in and he couldn't see. Emo wasn't a nudist. More so, he didn't have any assets to be showing. He hurried to pull up his puts and was about to run away. Emo, is that you? After this woman yelled, she used another very surprised tone and asked. She obviously knew Emo. Ning family wants to break marriage engagement. Ning family wants to break marriage engagement. Emo looked at this woman in front of him astonishingly. Her hair was short. Although she wasn't pretty, but she didn't look bad. She seemed a bit familiar, but he couldn't remember her. The other memories of the original Emo started to become blurry after some of them surged in class. He only had the memories of his past life before his reincarnation. Emo, I lent that much money to you, and you actually pretend to not know me. You are really annoying. This round-faced woman said. Emo suddenly remembered. This woman was called Wang Ying, someone of the Wang family in the capital. She was very outgoing and manly, talking without much consideration, but she didn't have a bad heart. She also studied at Ning Hai and was also going to Ning Hai University. Emo wasn't welcomed in the capital originally and didn't know much people, much less after he was kicked out of the Yi family. The reason he knew Wang Ying was because Wang Ying and his sister Yi Ling were classmates and often came to Emo's house to play. Although Emo was kicked out of the Yi family, many people who knew Emo pretended to not know him. However, Wang Ying was very lively and wasn't so calculated. She didn't pretend to not know him. Instead, she lent money to him when he had hard times in life. Ugh, it's you, Wang Ying. I'm sorry, my head was clumsy just then and I didn't recognize you. As Emo spoke, he was thinking. He didn't even have the money to eat. Should he ask her for a bit more? Just when Emo was thinking of an excuse to borrow money, Wang Ying spoke mysteriously. Emo, do you know who is the most famous after you in the capital? Oh, I shouldn't say most famous, but most hilarious. Wang Ying didn't seem to care at all if her words hurt Emo's feelings as she continued to talk happily. But she also didn't expect Emo to answer her. Instead, she continued to speak mysteriously. A few months ago, the Ning family went to your Yi family to break the engagement. You know what your big uncle said? Emo spoke plainly. I am Emo. I don't have an uncle. Oh, right. I'm sorry. I forgot you're no longer of the Yi family. You're big. Oh, I mean, Mr. Yi said that Emo is no longer a part of the Yi family. As for the marriage, I have no clue. I heard that he goes to school at Ning Hai University. You can go negotiate with him at Ning Hai. The Ning family was furious, but could do nothing about it. Yo, Emo, did people from the Ning family come looking for you? I heard that the Song family sent people to the Ning family and want to engage Ning Qingxue to Song Shaoan. Hee, you won't be able to imagine what your fiancé said. Speaking to hear, Wang Ying looked at Yimo very satisfactorily. She wanted to know Yimo's attitude. Yimo shook his head. To be honest, he had no impression of Ning Qingxue. Although she was the prettiest woman in the capital and was also his fiancée, he was no longer the original Yimo, nor was he the direct descendant of the Yi family. Ning Qingshue's attitude had nothing to do with him. She could marry whoever she wanted. He wouldn't care at all. On top of that, no matter how pretty Ning Qingxue was, could she be prettier than his master? Before, his EQ was too low. His master was nice to him, and he thought it was due to care for his well-being. But after experiencing life and death, if he still couldn't understand his master Luo Ying's feelings for him, then he should go die again. But now, he didn't know if Luo Ying was reincarnated like him. Thinking about this, Yimo phased. Seeing Yimo's state, Wang Ying thought he was reluctant to let go of Ning Qingxue, or was still troubled because of being kicked out of the Yi family, so she hurried and said, Yimo, although Ning Qingxue is very pretty, she is from the Ning family, but you are no longer the young master of the Yi family, so? Of course Yimo understood what Wang Ying meant and smiled indifferently before saying, Ning Qingshu? Oh, I already forgot. He was speaking the truth. He couldn't remember who Ning Qingxue was at all. Talking about impressions, he probably had a greater impression of this Wang Ying. Wang Ying rolled her eyes. But she continued to talk. If you say this, Ning Qingxue will be hurt. You know who is the most laughed at in the capital? It is her. Yimo was phased, thinking how could she be laughed at? He was naturally impotent and was kicked out of the Yi family. If the Ning family announced that they broke the engagement, everything would be fine. Could a lone ranger like him dare to go ask for the marriage? Wang Ying continued. When the Song family proposed to Ning Qingxue said in front of the public that she was already Yimo's woman and won't marry another person. Unless. But she only said unless and didn't say anything else. I don't know what her unless means, but after her words got out, it was said that her father was so furious that he locked her up. I don't know if this is true or false. It is because she said this that people in the entire capital is laughing at her. Although everyone knows that she is using you as an excuse to reject the proposal, you know what people are talking about you. They are all saying that she hadn't tasted a man yet and don't know what natural impotence is when she knows. Oh wait, I'm sorry. My words aren't directed to you. It's what everyone else is saying. After she reached here, Wang Ying finally realized that the naturally impotent person she was talking about was right in front of her. Just then, it was very possible that Yimo took off his pants to check his thing. Yimo thought that this Wang Ying really was immature, talking like tipping a bag of beans with no consideration of the impact of her words. But now, he really didn't feel anything. It was because he wasn't naturally impotent at all. As long as he reached to the stage 3 Qi gathering, this blocked meridian would open up itself. Although it was very hard to reach stage 3, it was still a hope for him. However, of course he wouldn't take Ning Qingshue's words seriously. Although Yimo hadn't seen her, with the title of the prettiest woman in the capital, she probably couldn't be bad-looking. She probably didn't like the Song Shaoan and thus used him as a shield. However, what Yimo couldn't understand was, if she used him as a shield, that was understandable, but why say it in a public environment? Wouldn't it be fine just to say it to the Song family? But then, Yimo immediately understood. Ning Qingxue didn't want to be engaged with anyone now, and therefore said that publicly. It wasn't because she wouldn't marry anyone else besides Yimo. Her words unless meant that unless she wanted to marry someone. The woman was smart. And here, this is for you. Wang Ying took out an envelope and gave it to Yimo. Yimo opened the envelope. There was a stack of money inside. He looked at Wang Ying in surprise, thinking that I didn't even ask for it, and you lent me this much. This is from your brother, that Yi Zifeng. He said someone else asked him to give this to you, but he didn't say who. I think it is probably himself. Wang Ying's words remind Yimo of his apparent little brother and little sister. It seemed that Yiling never gave a happy face to him, but that brother of his, Yi Zifeng, was nice to him. He needed this money right now, and didn't need to give it back. He would pay him back in the future. The psychotic who sells charms. The psychotic who sells charms. After thanking Wang Ying, Yimo returned to the school. He had nowhere to go now except for the school. He was unfamiliar with this place, but at the school, there were at least some things he could learn. On top of that, the spirit chi here was very scarce, but it seemed to be better inside the school. After the last class, he didn't go to his English teacher. For him, there was no difference whether he got full marks or 0 marks. He didn't need to listen to a woman ramble on. Although he hadn't yet cultivated, his memory was extremely strong. If he wanted to learn things, he could just go straight to the library. In the following days, Yimo would go to the library if he wasn't cultivating. He would occasionally go to a few classes he liked. As for not being able to graduate for ditching too many classes, he didn't care at all. The dormitory had originally 4 people. However, one of them was at the internet cafe all day long, while another was renting outside with another girl living the couple life. The third person was living in the city center. Yimo often cultivated in the small forest walks inside the university. Each time he cultivated, it would often be a whole night, so this dorm was often completely empty. The person who lived in the dorm the most would be Yimo. Every 3 days, he would come back for a good sleep. The rest of the time would be spent on cultivation. Although he knew that there would be no result in cultivating in a place like this, perhaps he would be able to reach foundation establishment even by the time he died. His long-term habits had resulted in him without anything better to do other than cultivating. He had a strong memory. He would remember things he liked with one look, and that saved him large amounts of time. Yimo, who kept a low profile in his past life, became lower after coming to this strange environment. However, after the lover letter event last time, he still received a nickname, called Lover, outside of the bedroom. However, Yimo wouldn't care about it at all. Things were still how they were to be. At the beginning, any people felt that he had a thick face for entering the dining hall and library very apathetically. But after some time, no one would notice it anymore. It was as though he was an insignificant drop of water in the ocean, just insignificant. After 2 months, Yimo barely reached the stage 1 of Qi gathering. This owed to him cultivating day and night, as well as spending the $20,000 Wang Ying brought him all on Chinese herbs and making it into soup. However, he also knew that without external things to help him, stage 1 of Qi gathering would probably be the final state he would reach in his entire lifetime. Although his cultivation progress wasn't much, he had acquired quite a lot from the library. Not only did he use 2 months to learn everything from primary school to high school, but he also scanned through all sorts of books about medicine as well as other metaphysical things. Although he felt that these metaphysical things were very shallow in this wood, he did not completely waste his time. After all, he was only stage 1 Qi gathering now. During summer holidays, the school library was going under reconstruction, and Yimo had nowhere to go. But now, he was in a financial crisis again. There wasn't much money left on him. He only had about 2,000 or so. If he didn't go find a job in the summer holidays and earn money, then eating would become a probably much less herbs for cultivation. If it was just finding a normal job, perhaps it would be fine for other people, but not Yimo. He needed to cultivate, and that had become a habit. Only cultivation would give him some sense of direction in life. Without money, this would be impossible. On top of that, his salary from a normal job would be a joke for cultivation. He knew how to concoct pills. However, he was only stage 1 Qi gathering and couldn't concoct pills. Even if he really could, were there spiritual herbs? Were there pill cauldrons? He gave up on the thought of concocting pills. Good thing was he also knew how to make charms. He was only stage 1 Qi gathering and couldn't make high-level charms, but he could make some low-level spirit-cleansing charms, ghost-repelling charms, protection charms, or even the simple fireball charms and so forth. TL note: these charms usually refer to the paper ones. The paper bombs in Naruto is a good indication of what they look like. Most of them are consumables, so they can only be used once. He bought some charm paper, weasel's hair, cinnabar, special type of red paint, and so on. Although good charms were all made with spiritual beasts' blood and skin, there was no way there were spiritual beasts on Earth. He could make it with cinnabar and chicken blood after some other procedures. Although he couldn't make high-level charms, it was enough for these sub-level 1 charms. Luckily, with the top-grade Huang Biao here and a few herbs, he could make it into charms. After all this, Yimo's remaining 2,000 was almost gone. TL note: Huang Biao. Yellow paper used to inscribe runes. Cinnabar, rooster blood, and a few of the cheap herbs were made into charm-making materials with a light aroma. A few $1,000s were indeed little. He could only make 30 or so charms with these things combined, and this didn't include the materials he wasted due to failure. Good thing was that although Yimo was only stage 1 chi gathering, he was originally a master who could make level 5 charms. But now, the charms he made didn't even have a level. With material enough for 30 or so charms, he only made 8 charms. Spirit Cleansing Charm, Ghost Repelling Charm, Protection Charm, Fireball Charm. He made 2 of each. Although he only made 8 charms, one of the mind-clearing charms due to his sudden burst in luck was almost made into something close to a level 1 charm. This was a surprise amongst a surprise. The 8 charms took him half a month. On average, he could even make 1 charm a day. What he had to do now was sell the charms. Although he knew that selling charms were thought to be metaphysical propaganda here, the government didn't force a prohibition on it. Ninghai had a large market, sea treasures and ancient relics trading market. It was also called by some as Sea Treasure Garden. There were not only all sorts of ancient items and fascinating items sold here, there were also people like Yimo selling charms. Yimo also saw the charms people sold here. They were all made with normal Huang Biao without any spiritual qi. It wouldn't have any effect at all. However, they were all sold very cheaply, 10 to tens of dollars a sheet. There were rarely any over 100. Of course, Yimo couldn't sell his charms so cheaply. If he really sold it for that cheap, he might as well go find a job. In order to prevent him being recognized and thus disturbing his peaceful life, or maybe even being captured and used as a lab rat, Yimo wore a big pair of shades as well as a hat with a very low rim. He came to Sea Treasure Garden and found a corner to set up his stall like those fortune-telling people. He placed a few charms on a piece of black clothes and opened his business just like this. Although there were many city guards in Ninghai, there weren't any in Sea Treasure Garden, so no one came to Yimo to bother Yimo, saving him a lot of trouble. If other people relied on the quantity of their chars for money, Yimo knew he could only see his to those who had astute eyes. If it wasn't someone who could tell how good his charms were, they would not buy his charms. There's Ghost Repelling Charm. What's this, yo boss? How much is your Ghost Repelling Charm? A man and woman walked in front of Yimo with the guy asking. Yimo didn't think that there would be someone to ask for the price as soon as he set up his stall. He immediately stood up with surprised joy. All the charms are 10,000 apiece. You psychotic. Before Yimo finished speaking, he received those 2 words as well as the backs of the 2 people walking off into the distance. First customer. First customer. Yimo didn't even get the chance to say that the close to level 1 mind-clearing charm was $20,000 before being called a psychotic. However, he wasn't disappointed. After all, his charms could only be sold to those who could recognize its worth, because only those who had good eyes could see that his charms carried a sliver of spiritual qi. But what made Yimo disappointed was that he had set up his stall for 5 days in a row, and there were quite a lot of people who asked, but he hadn't been able to sell one. More so, his charm stall had already become famous in the Sea Treasure Garden because his charms sold for 10,000 a sheet. Many people didn't come to buy the charms, but instead to see what the $10,000 charm looked like. Yimo's stall also became a big joke in the Sea Treasure Garden. Other people's charms were all A4 sized, but his charm was only the size of a palm. Some were only half the size of a palm. There had never been a stall that sold charms for over 10,000, and it was non-negotiable. This way, it was hard for him not to become famous. On the 9th day, Yimo was beginning to give up. He was already certain that there was no one here that could recognize the worth of his products. Only he knew that these charms were worth more than 10,000. Even 100,000 wouldn't be expensive for it. However, it was pointless as the good racehorse could not be recognized. Yimo decided today was the last day. If there still wasn't anyone who would buy his charms, he would go to a labor market and find a job first. Otherwise, he would even be able to eat. Interest was only for a few days. Although Yimo's $10,000 charm was looked at by people for many days, these few days was past the interest period. Although it was very far, his hearing wasn't normal and could still hear everything clearly. Jangwen, This place is full of people who sell fake medicine. It's where people who believe the mystical comes. You have already bought enough magical relics. I think you should stop. I already contacted a brain hospital in France. It is said to be very famous. Why don't we transfer your mum to that hospital for treatment? The one speaking was a tall man. He was indeed very handsome. The woman was also quite tall. She had a cold face yet upper-class temperament. Her skin was white and was very beautiful indeed. Yin Yin in his class wasn't bad, but compared to this woman, she was a complete shit. Yimo really couldn't understand why the previous soul had such low standards, being interested in women like Yin Yin. However, this beautiful woman looked very cold. There seemed to be trouble between her eyebrows. Hearing the words of this handsome man, this woman called Jingwen was frowning her eyes more. It was not that she didn't want her mother to go to the hospital. The 3 years, she took her mother across 6 medically developed countries, been to tens of hospitals. However, there was no progress on her mother's condition at all. Wang Pong, I didn't ask for you to come with me. You came yourself. Have my mum not been to enough hospitals lately? You also recommended 5 or 6 as well, but my mum is still unconscious now. If you don't have the patience, you can leave if you want. This woman's tone was very cold. Obviously, she didn't really have a good impression to the handsome man besides her. The other woman looked very soldierly, but she only followed the Jingwen woman closely. She didn't speak at all. By the looks of it, she seemed to be a bodyguard. Yimo found it funny. Anyone received useless advice from another person 5 or 6 times wouldn't really have a good impression of that person. This Wang Pong was really a unique one. He actually managed to give shit ideas this many times. This woman said her mother was unconscious for 3 years. By the looks of it, her mother was probably a vegetable. If her mother was a vegetable and it had only been 3 years, then his almost level 1 mind-clearing charm should be able to wake her up. Thinking about this, he immediately started to promote charms for sale, possessed, vegetables, impaired bodies. One of my charms will be effective. 2 of them brings complete recovery. Yimo said this on purpose, of course. His purpose was to see if he could do business with this pretty lady. This woman could afford to run around in multiple different countries. This definitely meant that she was wealthy. She shouldn't mind 10 or 20 grand. The troubled Su Jingwen heard that there was a charm that could cure vegetables and immediately felt as if she had heard heavenly music. She didn't even think before coming to Yimo's stall. May I ask, can you charms cure vegetable people? Su Jingwen's voice was shaky. It was like a drowning person who grabbed a log. She was very tense. Yimo smiled calmly and thought, if his level 1 charm couldn't even cure a mortal who's unconscious, then he might as well bang his head against tofu and suicide. But this business came because of his sprooking. Of course he wanted to complete this business, otherwise he would have sprooked for no reason. When this pretty woman asked, he hurried and said, of course, my charms can cure someone with 1 breath, much less a vegetable. That is passed down from my ancestor. Yimo was going to continue to make bullshit, but this pretty lady interrupted him and asked desperately, my mother is a vegetable and now I want to wake her up. What charm do I need? Yimo nodded and thought to himself, I already know. Otherwise, why did I call you over? He made a contemplative and deep face and said, this is simple. You only need to buy a spirit cleansing charm. I have 2 spirit cleansing characters. The high-quality one is 20,000. The normal one is 10,000. Non-negotiable. What, you cheater? How dare you swindle people on the streets? I'm calling the police immediately. Hearing that 2 charms made out of Huang Biao was selling for $30,000, this handsome guy called Wang Peng immediately raged, pointing at Yimo's nose and swore. Yimo kicked Wang Peng's hand to the side, but secretly used subtle strength, making Wang Peng unable to use his arm in the future. It couldn't be seen now, but later on, when Wang Peng's hand tenses, his wrist would dislocate. Yimo's movements were completed in one swift flow. Other people couldn't tell, but the soldierly-looking woman who followed Su Jingwen saw this as a glimmer of shock flashed across her eyes. But immediately, it returned to be calm. Kicking Wang Peng's hand to the side, Yimo spoke coldly. I didn't make you buy it, what a joke. Piss off, I'm doing business, don't interfere with me. How dare you? Wang Peng's was so furious, but before he finished, he was stopped by the cold-looking woman. Wang Peng, please move aside. I don't need you to follow behind us, Su Jingwen said coldly to Wang Peng, and then turned to Yimo saying apologetically, Sorry, master, this person is only walking with us and can't delegate my intentions. Jiangwen, this person obviously covered his face and this palm-sized yellow paper sells for 10,000. It is so obvious he's a liar. Tens of thousands of dollars is a small matter, but what if something happens to your mother? Wang Peng still wanted to persuade her, but Su Jingwen's complexion turned cold. It was obvious that she was getting impatient. Renting house. Renting house, you two can leave. I won't sell my things to you. This guy here is annoying me. Yimo pointed at Wang Peng and said to Su Jingwen. Su Jingwen was so troubled by her mum's condition that she seemed very fatigued all the time. She had already lost hope for the hospital. She heard from someone that her mum could be haunted by an evil spirit, and as long as she bought a spirit-repelling artifact, it could cast away the spirit and make her mum wake up. She bought quite a lot of artifacts, but her mum still didn't have the slightest sign of waking up. Now, someone said that his charm could make her mum wake up. How could she let that pass? Even if this person was tricking her, it was only tens of thousands of dollars. That really wasn't much for her Su family. If there was a sliver of hope, she wouldn't give up. Although in the depth of her heart she also knew that this person's words were probably 99% fake, she still wanted to try nonetheless. Hearing Yimo say that, how could she not be worried? She hurried and said to Yimo, I'm sorry, master. I have no relations with this person. After she finished, Su Jingwen stared coldly at Wang Peng and said, Mr. Wang, you're free to leave. Please stop following me, or I will be calling the police. Hearing Su Jingwen's words, Wang Peng stared bleakly at Yimo. In his heart, he already considered Yimo to be a paralyzed person. When he went back, he would call people to break this guy's arms and legs. But since Su Jingwen already said that, he no longer had the face to stay and could only turn away to leave. Yimo saw Wang Peng's eyes and knew what that person wanted to do. However, he was only going to do this business during these few days. As soon as he was finished, he would leave. He didn't have the time for other things. More so, he wasn't afraid of this Wang Peng at all. I want all of your spirit-cleansing charms here. How much is it? Seeing Wang Peng had left, Su Jingwen asked desperately. Yimo took the 2 spirit-cleansing charms and said, I worked my heart out for this. Of course there won't be much. There is only 2. You only need this good one. As for the other one, you can store it with a jade both. Usually, it would still be working in 10 years. It will be 30,000 for the 2 of these. As he spoke, Yimo took the 2 spirit-cleansing charms and gave it to Su Jingwen and showed her the one that was close to level 1. Su Jingwen took the 2 charms but gave a 50,000 check to Yimo. Yimo wasn't someone who liked to take advantage of others, so he took another protection charm and fireball charm and gave it to Su Jingwen. He said, Since you gave me 20,000, I'll give these 2 to you as well. This is a protection charm. When you go back, put it in a small pouch and wear it on your body. As for the fireball, it's for self-defense. If you encounter someone who tries to harm you, just throw it over and say Lin. TL note, the Lin here literally means arrival/arrive. Seeing that Yimo didn't want to take advantage of her, Su Jingwen immediately had greater hopes for these 2 charms. Yimo didn't look like a cheater no matter what. After hearing Yimo's words, she hurried and asked, Master, how do I use this spirit-cleansing charm? Yimo took the check and said, Same. Just throw the charm at the patient and say, Lin, what is your last name? Is it possible for you to come see my mother together? I will pay double for you. Taking the spirit-cleansing charm, Zhongli felt that her hasty mind seemed to be gradually calmed. On top of that, this paper-looking charm weighed quite something. This gave her more confidence for Yimo, and that's why she thought about inviting Yimo. Of course Yimo wouldn't go with Su Jingwen and waved his hand. I don't need to go. This charm can definitely save the person. Seeing that Yimo didn't want to go with them, Su Jingwen and the woman called Xiao you could only take the 2 charms and rush back to try. When the 2 ladies left, Yimo turned to pack up his stall in order to cash out the money at a bank. He desperately needed money right now. Sister Jing, this person wore a big pair of shades and we couldn't even see his face. Wang Peng's words did have reason. I think he may be a fraud. Although she clearly thought the EMO was a fraud, Xiaoyu still expressed it euphemistically. Su Jingwen sighed. She also thought that EMO was a fraud, but even knowing that he was a fraud, she still had to try because she didn't want to give up on any measure that could wake up her mother. Even if she knew she was being cheated, she still had to try. Seeing Su Jingwen sigh without talking, the bodyguard Xiaoyu seemed to know Su Jingwen's thoughts. Her face was also sad but didn't continue saying anything. The first thing EMO did after getting the 50,000 was to find a place to live because right now, he needed some herbs to make some serums. It wasn't convenient for him in the school. It would be much better if he rented a house outside. Although he wouldn't see his dorm mates once in a few months, his things were all secrets and he didn't want to expose it like that. It was very easy to rent a place in Ninghai as long as there was money, but there was rarely a place that could satisfy EMO. This was because this place he wanted to live in not only needed to be quiet and have a good environment, but also a place where he could practice martial arts. It was very hard for him to cultivate right now, but he didn't want to forget his mortal martial arts from his past life. He needed some measures for self-defense. The Ningdu district and Ninghai University where EMO went to school were coincidentally on the north and south respectively. Although it was all in the same city, there was more than 30 miles of road in between. When EMO had found Ningdu, it was already almost midnight. The reason that he wanted to find somewhere far to live was due to two reasons. The first was because he didn't want the people in the school to know his secrets. The second was that he wished to run to the school in the future. This could train his body. Just when EMO felt that he couldn't find his living place today, a little yard with faint traces of spirit chi appeared in front of him. What gave EMO surprise joy was that there was actually a poster saying for leasing on the yard. Before even entering the house, EMO had already decided to rent this place. Not for other things, only because the spirit chi here was relatively decent. Who are you looking? The door was knocked open by EMO, and a 50 or so years old woman appeared and scanned EMO. Meanwhile, forgot to reply to this woman because he saw that there was actually a silver heart grass here. No wonder there was spirit chi emanating. He was surprised to see this herb here. However, there was only one and that was way too less. Silver heart grass was the main spirit grass for making chi gathering pill. How could it exist on the spirit chi deprived earth? EMO forced the excitement in his heart down and faced the woman who looked at him with a weird glance before hurrying to say, "Auntie, I saw that this place was for lease. I want to rent it." Hearing EMO's words, she finally understood. It was someone looking to rent the house, so she hurried and let EMO come in. After some conversation, EMO finally understood. This yard house had 2 rooms on the east and west as well as a living room. The house owner didn't want to rent the living room. The room on the west was already rented by someone. Meanwhile, the room on the west was where the house owner originally lived. However, the house owner was now going to the Ningbei district where the house owner's son lived and therefore wanted to rent out the east side as well. Therefore, she met EMO. What took the woman by surprise was that she set the rent to be 1,100 a month, but this not-so-wealthy-looking young man didn't even say anything and just paid out a year's rent straight away. "Dad, why did you come back?" Su Jingwen returned to the private hospital, and the first thing she saw was her father. Ever since her mother became a vegetable, her father invested almost all of his time into his career. Even her mother's company was managed by Su Jingwen. However, due to her mother's illness, the company was in a mess. "Dad, why did you come back?" Su Jingwen returned to the private hospital, and the first thing she saw was her father. Ever since her mother became a vegetable, her father invested almost all of his time into his career. Even her mother's company was managed by Su Jingwen. However, due to her mother's illness, the company was in a mess. But even so, her father didn't even ask about it, and also rarely came to the private hospital to see her mother. However, Su Jingwen didn't know why her father suddenly came to the hospital today. If I don't come back, I don't know how much trouble you are going to cause. Buying all those random things, and this time, you even believed a charm would cure your mother. Is your next move to invite a Tiaotishin? Su Jianzhong's face was very bleak. Obviously, he was very unhappy with his daughter. TL note, Tiaotishin. someone who jumps around and invites spirits to enter her body to perform magic. Hearing this, Su Jingwen knew that Wang Ping dabied on her. She felt more despicable towards this donkey shit that only looked good on the outside. However, she was also very unhappy with her father and therefore remained silent and didn't want to reply. What? You can't talk anymore. Immediately throw away all those random things you have bought, Su Jianjing said with a tough voice. Dad, after Mom got sick, what have you done? You only came to visit her once when she became unconscious. Where have you been all these years? Ask yourself, have you treated Mom right? What I have done, I'm very clear about that in my heart, and I don't need you to control me. Mom never criticized you for the women you have outside, but what about yourself? Have you thought for Mom the slightest bit? After staying silent for a little while, Su Jingwen suddenly burst out. You? Su Jianzhong's face went red and white after hearing her words. He raised his hand and was about to give his daughter a slap, but seeing his daughter's stern yet fatigued face, he slowly put his hands down. He knew in his heart that he really didn't have the right to say anything about his daughter. He had indeed wronged his wife and daughter. His wife's company was all managed by his daughter, and he didn't help the least bit. Okay, I know I can't control you. I hope this is the last time you are superstitious. Don't do this again. You have received high-order education. Can't you understand this? Don't start conflict with Wang Peng over a superstitious fraud on the streets. Sometimes, the faithful words grate upon the ear. Su Jianzhong said helplessly. Su Jingwen sneered in her heart. But Su Jianzhong immediately thought there were problems with his eyes. The yellow charm that his daughter threw out actually turned into numerous white rays after his daughter said Lin. These white rays entered his wife's body as some ashes rained down around her. If it wasn't that the whole room suddenly cooled down and that his eyes were feeling pain from the luminous rays, he almost thought he was hallucinating. What the heck was this? Su Jingwen was also shocked. She thought that after throwing the charm out and saying the word, it would continue to fall on her mother's blanket, and then she would prepare to wake up her mother. But things greatly exceeded her expectations. The charm she threw out turned into numerous cool white rays, and they all immersed into her mother's body. Meanwhile, the charm she threw out all disappeared. In the blink of an eye, all she saw were some tiny specks of dust flying around. Su Jingwen felt goosebumps on her head. She knew that a lot of those frauds used chemistry occurrences to cheat people. However, she is a well-educated science student. There was no way she could explain this phenomenon with any chemistry reaction. Could it be that this was really a charm? Thinking that this charm might really be working, Su Jingwen's hands started to shake. If what that master who sold charms said was really true, then her mom should be about to wake up. Thinking about this, Su Jingwen could no longer hold the excitement in her heart and rushed beside her mom. Chapter 7 Super Jianan. Chapter 7 Super Jianan. Mom, I'm Jingwen. Can you hear me? Mom. Su Jingwen agitatedly grabbed the woman's hand and calling to her non-stop. The woman's hands moved and then her eyebrows twitched. Slowly, she actually opened her eyes. Confused, she looked at her daughter who was full of joy and tears and wanted to say something. However, Su Jingwen excitedly swooped into the woman's arms and cried, Mom, you're finally awake, the woman on the bed gradually woke up. She felt a light, refreshing air slowly circulating inside her body, making her spirit gradually recover. What happened to me when The woman on the bed was completely awake and was about to struggle to sit up. However, the long-term lying down made her limbs numb, rendering her unable to sit up. She even felt that refreshing gust was still recovering her limbs. Su Jianzhong stared at this incomprehensible scene with his mouth wide open in shock. He even forgot to speak. It was the first time that he found out there really was those unexplainable things in the world. What is a hallucination? Yimo felt very pleased with his new residence. He still had tens of thousands of dollars on him right now, and for the moment, he didn't need to go out and earn money. Every day, he stayed in the yard to cultivate, and he also carefully moved the silver heartgrass into another flower pot. After a month, Yimo also knew that the person living in the west side was a 20-or-so-year-old woman. However, Emo cultivated every night and went into the yard every morning to practice martial arts. Meanwhile, the woman also seemed to go to work very early in the morning, and by the time she got back each day, Emo had already begun cultivating in his room. Therefore, after a month, the two still didn't even see each other for once. Emo didn't care at all what sort of woman lived on the west side. Although his life was mundane, he didn't even have enough time to cultivate each day. How would he have the time to chat up? Although Sue knew that the house owner also rented out the east side, she didn't know what sort of person rented the house. She only knew that this was a male youth that was about the same age as her. However, she went to work every day at 6 a.m. By the time she came back, it was already nearly 7 p.m., but she had never seen this person. Because the director of the state hospital was doing work inspection this month, she didn't even get a day of rest on the weekends. Meanwhile, this youth never appeared before or after she went to work. If there wasn't the change in the flowers in the flower pot in the garden each day, she would have thought that this person didn't exist at all. But as the time went by, she understood that the person who lived opposite to her room was probably a Jinan and one of those super Jinans. There was another half a month before school started. The first thing he did was to look at his silver heart grass, and then he proceeded to care for all the other flowers as well. Then, he planned to practice a set of fist techniques. However, remembering that Sue was by his side, he greeted her and left. Seeing Emo image walk out of the door, she finally let a gasp of relief. Thinking about his focused state when he cared for the flowers, she thought to herself that she was thinking too much. Would a fugitive have the heart to care for flowers? Judging by his clothes, she understood that he wasn't someone well off. She really couldn't understand what he was doing all day. Chengdu Lake Garden. It was the closest garden near where Emo lived. Not only was the area big, but there was also a clear lake. There were many elderly, or those who liked to exercise here. Emo also came here before. Originally, he only liked practicing martial arts in the yard. Today was his first time coming here to practice. The air here wasn't bad, and the environment was obviously better than the yard. After finishing a set, Emo was very satisfied. His chi grew more pure. Although it was still far from stage 2, it was good as long as he improved. Your fist technique is nice, friend. However, I've seen a lot of fist techniques, but I can't tell what fist technique you used. What a shame. Just when Emo was finished up, a 30-year-old middle-aged man came over and complimented him. Chapter 8 Housemates. Chapter 8 Housemates. This middle-aged person was also practicing his fists nearby, and Emo also saw him. However, Emo thought his martial arts were more for show and didn't pay attention to it too much. Now that he came to greet him, Emo couldn't just ignore him, so he could only smile and answer, "I'm just practicing randomly myself, it's nothing much." Hearing Emo's words, this middle-aged man smiled awkwardly. It was quite obvious that Emo wasn't interested in getting to know him. However, he really felt that Emo's fist technique was good and shouldn't be worse than his. This made him want to get to know him, and that was why he came up to say hello. "My name is Fong Weicheng. I can tell you came from a great master. My hands are itching. How about we have a quick match?" After the middle-aged man said these, Emo finally understood that he came to him looking for a fight. Looking at Fong Weicheng, Emo shook his head and said, "You are no match for me. There is no need for a match." Fong Weicheng phased. Just before, Emo's words made him feel that Emo was very humble. How come he suddenly became so arrogant? Uncontrollably, he felt his face blush. Although he felt this young man's martial arts caught his attention, this young man overestimated himself too much by saying that he was no match for him. Fong Weicheng entered the army when he was 17 and left when he was 32. Although he became a driver after retirement, he had never dropped his martial arts. How could Emo say that he was no match for him? This young man was at most a little over 20. There was no way he would believe that he was no match for a youth in his early 20s. The reason he wanted to spar with this young man was because he felt Emo's martial arts weren't for show, and so wasn't his. Sparring with Emo would bring him good. "How do you know I am no match for you?" "To be honest, after I left the army, I had never met a match. Since you're so confident, then let's try it." Fang Weiqing felt he was losing face. Yimo shook his head and said reluctantly, "Okay, since you want to, then take the first move. Just right here? We're not going to a larger place?" Fang Weiqing looked around. Yimo smiled and said, "It's only a matter of a few moves. That won't be necessary." Fang Weiqing was rendered speechless by Yimo's words. Anger started to rise up in his heart as he spoke with some fury. "In that case, I'm attacking." It was a mediocre yet sturdy black tiger tearing the heart. Fang Weiqing's thought was that although this move looked simple, when this young man moved, his move would immediately change and let Yimo know his power. Just when Fang Weiqing attacked with his fist, Yimo suddenly took a step forward and grabbed Fang Weiqing's fist before he even had the chance to change moves. Yimo raised his hand and Fang Weiqing's near 100 kg body was raised up by Yimo's hand. Fang Weiqing's head immediately buzzed. This really exceeded his sense. When he was completely conscious, he found that he was thrown on a stone stool beside Yimo. It was just like he was originally sitting there. Meanwhile, the young man he sparred with had disappeared. Amazing. After some time, Fang Weiqing finally caught on with what happened and muttered to himself. Even his instructor in the army couldn't win him so easily. When Yimo walked into the little yard, Su Wei was observing the flowers he cultivated. Although Yimo grew a lot of flowers, it was all mainly to cover up that silver heart grass. Seeing Yimo walk in, Su Wei felt a bit awkward and hurried to stand up trying to find a conversation. "Didn't think that you liked growing flowers." Usually, men who grow flowers are very meticulous. "You seem like a meticulous person." "Oh, I bought some vegetables today. Let's eat together later. After all, we're neighbors, and we can get to know each other a little." Yimo had always been eating outside and didn't expect someone would invite him to dinner today. Of course he wouldn't reject something like this and smiled. "Okay, thank you. I always see you going early and coming late. How come you didn't go to work today?" "One of my colleagues applied for a leave for these few days and coincidentally, I am resting these few days, so I am taking night shifts for her." Su Wei didn't think this Jianan's observations were so on point. Su Wei's dishes were not bad. At least they were better than what Yimo went out to eat every day. "Today's food is really good, thank you." Yimo thought how good it would be if he could freeload some food off her every day. Then, he wouldn't have to go out every day for food. "We're neighbors, no need to thank me. You can also invite me to eat in the future." Su Wei said playfully. She felt that Yimo didn't seem like a bad person. Yimo smiled awkwardly and said, "I never cook myself." "Then go to the restaurant." Su Wei felt this Yimo was cute. Usually, one invited a girl who he wasn't too familiar with to the restaurant, who would cook themselves. "Don't they usually go restaurants?" Yimo said helplessly. "Okay, if I have the opportunity, I will invite you." Meanwhile, he thought to himself, knew there weren't free foods in the world. As soon as I finished this lunch, I owed her the next meal. "Yimo, let's exchange numbers. Mine is 13xxxxxxxx. What's yours?" Su Wei took out an exquisite pink phone and asked. "I don't have a phone. If you need something, just knock on my door. I can still help you out with the usual stuff. I'm going back." After he finished, Yimo stood up and went back to his room. Su Wei phased for a bit and thought even a laborer nowadays would have a phone. Yimo didn't even have a phone. He must be in a really bad situation. By the looks of it, he probably didn't even pay the rent. She wondered how the owner would let him live inside. However, this guy really loved his dignity and actually said he was able to help her with the usual stuff. Su Wei shook her head. This Yimo didn't seem like a bad guy. It was just that he needed to save his face. Should she help him find a job in the hospital? It was better than being jobless. Su Wei thought that she was at least kind of pretty. Why didn't this Yimo not even want to sit for a little longer? This was really disappointing. It was as though he really came for the food. However, Su Wei thought it through very quickly. He was probably self-conscious. After all, he was jobless and couldn't even afford a phone. Of course he was uncomfortable sitting down and talking with me. Thinking about this, Su Wei finally found some satisfaction in her heart. Meanwhile, when Yimo went back to his room, he was thinking if he really should buy a phone. However, after thinking that it was completely pointless to buy a phone, he really didn't have any friends or relatives here. Who would he contact? Therefore, he relinquished the idea. His 50,000 was all spent on rent and some herbs as well as on the usually expenditure. Now, there was only around 20,000 left. Guillermo decided to go set up his stall again. However, this time, he wasn't going to sell charms again. Charms were too hard to sell. If he didn't meet that desperate woman last time, he probably wouldn't even be able to sell one. This time, his idea was to set up a small night market clinic stall. This was because he was inspired by Su Wei's job. Another reason for that mobile clinic stall was because it was highly mobile, and he wouldn't be targeted by others. On top of that, in the night market, the city guards wouldn't care, and he could cultivate while waiting for customers. Of course, the main reason was because nomadic doctors were forbidden by the government, so he could only open business at night. Guillermo's idea was the same as selling charms. He was either going to do nothing at all or earn enough for a long time. Prettiest girl in Ninghai University. Prettiest girl in Ninghai University. The second day, Guillermo didn't go to the Chengdu Lake Park to train again. Instead, he woke up early in the morning and finished a set of fist training in the yard. Then, he went out to buy things: a medical box and a set of silver needles. Other than this, he also bought a bunch of herbs. He made some simple medicine balls and soups. Of course, they weren't even the simplest concocted pills. However, for Guillermo, these things were enough for him to set up a stall. This way, his remaining money had sent him into a financial crisis once again. When he finished preparing everything, Ninghai University had started school. Guillermo was already in his 4th year of uni. As everyone expected, Guillermo didn't pass a single subject and had to do makeup exams for everything. However, Guillermo didn't give a shit about that or the school. If it was a normal student, they would be punished heavily or even forced to exit the school if they failed more than 3 subjects. However, Guillermo was a special type of person. Although he was kicked out of the Yi family, the school wouldn't start conflict with the Yi family over this. Who knew what the big families were playing at? He would leave after 4 years anyways. The school had nothing to lose. When he entered Ninghai University in the first place, he didn't get in by examination. As for makeup exams, Guillermo didn't care at all. It had no place in his heart. He was still focused on preparing his night market stall. Guillermo went to Ninghai University every day to jog. The main purpose was to practice his cloud shadow step. Right now, he had no progress in cultivation. If he couldn't even cultivate mortal martial arts, then he would really develop a sense of insecurity. However, he didn't feel the danger of constant life and death battles that were on the Luoyu continent. This made him feel much safer. It was already the 2nd week of school. Although Guillermo still hadn't set up the nomadic medical stall, he already felt huge improvements in his cloud shadow step. It appeared that leaving early and coming back late, covering 70 kilometers of distance, was beneficial for him. This morning, Guillermo woke up a little late and slept 1 hour more than usual. When he ran to Ninghai University, it was already 7 a.m. After going to the small restaurant outside the campus for some soy milk and a few buns, it was already almost 8 a.m. Big brother, do you want to buy a flower? Outside the restaurant stood a little girl holding a bunch of fresh flowers. She looked tense and scared as she came up to Guillermo and asked. Guillermo looked at the little girl with a very thin layer of clothes on. It was the September weather, and it was quite cool in the morning. This little girl came out to sell flowers this early. Her family must be having some difficulties. Guillermo thought about the time when he was a small child. He was an orphan until 9 years old when he was brought by an old Taoist to his master's sect. However, in only a year's time, the old Taoist died. After the old Taoist died, he followed his teacher Luoying, and only then did his life completely change for the better. How come you're not going to school? Guillermo thought to himself that this was about the time for class. It was a 9 years compulsory school system here. This little girl should not go to school. Today is Saturday. I'm out to help my big sister sell flowers. The little girl's voice was very soft, but Guillermo could still hear her uneasiness, but Guillermo couldn't care about that much, so he asked, "Okay, I'll buy some. How much for one?" Meanwhile, he thought to himself, it was already Saturday today. He'd been running around every day that he forgot the time. $5. If you buy more, it's $3. When the little girl heard that Guillermo was going to buy flowers, her voice immediately became clearer. Quite obviously, Yemo's words gave her confidence. Okay, I'll take all of your flowers. Here's your money. Yemo looked at the roses in the little girl's hands. There was about 20 or so. He took out a $100 note and gave it to the little girl. He took the flowers from the little girl's hands and turned to leave. Big brother, I still need to give you change. The little girl saw it was $100. If Yemo took them all, she would only charge $3 each. No need. The flowers I give to my girlfriend shouldn't be discounted. See ya. Yemo took the flowers and already disappeared into the gateway of Ninghai University. If this was after school, Yemo would have probably given these flowers to Sue. However, he was in the school now. Looked like he could only find a bin and dump it. Is the person who just bought the flowers Yemo from our school? He actually has a girlfriend? But his words are quite philosophical. The flowers I give to my girlfriend shouldn't be discounted. But who would have the courage to be his girlfriend? Two girls at the front of the school saw Yemo take the roses and walked into the school, and one of them who knew Yemo asked curiously, "He is Yemo?" The other girl was also curious, but she was definitely so much prettier than the girl talking before. The meaning of her words were obvious. She had heard of Yemo but didn't know him. "Sume, you are the campus queen of Ninghai University. Of course you don't know his tragic world, but I know this person. It is said that he is a tragedy. Let's follow him and see who his girlfriend is." The other girl laughed. "Yin Zi, but I feel that he didn't buy it for his girlfriend. He bought it for the little girl." The girl called Sume said with frowned eyes. "Xiaomei, I was just about to find you. Didn't think I would see you at the front of the school. I see your fee today. I'm inviting you to dinner. Don't tell me you don't have time." Before Yinzi could reply, a voice already sounded. A BMW X7 was parked outside the school. From the car came a good-looking youth, however. His skin had an unhealthy white to it. When he saw Su Mei, his face brightened up in happiness. "It's Zhang Wenxiao, the biggest wealthy second generation in the school. Mei Mei, you really are charismatic. The prettiest girl and the wealthiest guy. I really envy you." Yinzi looked at Su Mei with a face full of envy. Her eyes seemed to say, "If only I was Su Mei." Su Mei's face sunk and immediately turned her head around and saw this young wealthy kid and apologized. "Sorry, my boyfriend is already here." After she finished, she ran a few steps and came by Yemo's side and held Yemo's arm with her hands. Then, she used an extremely soft and gentle tone and said, "Yemo, why did you just come? I've been waiting for you so long. Did you buy these flowers for me? They're really pretty." Yemo was unexpectedly shafted by an unknown pretty lady who also said that the flowers in his hands were for her. He asked himself, since when did he have such a pretty girlfriend? How come he didn't know? But Yemo saw that not far away, Zhang Wenxiao just got off his BMW with a bleak face. Immediately, he knew he was used as a shield. Seeing the smiling, beautiful girl that held his arms, Yemo immediately sneered in his heart. A sense of disgust rose from the bottom of his heart. This woman thought that just because she was a bit pretty, she could just do this to people. For her, it was only something as simple as using him as a shield. But afterwards, she could just pat her ass and leave, but he would be left to deal with a pile of shit. It was as though that it was Yemo's honor that she used him. These self-centered women really felt too good about themselves. "I genuinely want to invite you to dinner. I genuinely want to invite you to dinner." Just seeing the eyes with which the pale-faced youth looked at him, Yemo knew he wasn't going to let him go. Although Yemo didn't fear anyone, he felt uncomfortable being calculated by someone like this. And this was him. If it was the original Yemo, then the consequences would be rather serious. The pale-faced teenager obviously didn't look like a good person. If he would let Yemo go scot-free after this, then Yemo would have really wasted the many decades he lived in the cultivation realm. Staring expressionlessly once at the pretty girl beside him, Yemo didn't speak. Although he was really repulsed by the girl's irresponsible behavior without thought of what consequences it would bring to others, he didn't like this pale-faced, dead fish eyes youth either. If this guy dared to look for trouble with him afterwards, he didn't mind leaving him with a memory that would last his entire lifetime. "Friend, not bad. Even Sume looks at you with special eyes. Let's get to know each other. I'm Zheng Wenxiao. You seem quite familiar. You should be someone I know. Zheng Wenxiao walked in front of Mo and said bitterly. There was a flash of contempt and maliciousness in his eyes. There was even some pity in his eyes, as though he had seen how Mo would beg to him with his knees on the ground. Fuck off. Mo didn't give a shit about Zheng Wenxiao. With his life and death experiences in the cultivation realm, he could already tell what Zheng Wenxiao was thinking just by his eyes. If Zheng Wenxiao really pissed him off, he wouldn't mind killing him. If this place didn't welcome him, there would be other places that he could go. Although he knew that this was a legality society and killing had to occur in the shadows, and that overt murder had very serious consequences, some habits could be changed so easily. He was a cultivator. He could still live life in the mountains. You nice, how dare you? Mo was prepared that when Zheng Wenxiao attacked, he would teach him a lesson first. However, he didn't think that Zheng Wenxiao only said a few words and turned away with a bleak face. Mo understood that Zheng Wenxiao probably saw his robust physique and didn't dare to make a move by himself. He probably went back to gather men, but Mo didn't consider him to be a threat at all. Mo, do you know who he is? Sume didn't think Mo was so aggressive, not even giving a shit about the wealthiest second generation in the Ninghai University. Zheng Wenxiao's father was the vice mayor of the Ninghai city. Meanwhile, his mother was from the Qiu family whose business was in the top 100 of China. There shouldn't be anyone in Ninghai University that didn't know him. A wealthy second generation like this was told by Mo to fuck off. This Mo really did have some problems with his brain, but she really liked his actions. Sume came to the reality of what happened quickly and admired Mo for his actions, helping her drive away a fly that she hated a lot. So she immediately smiled. Mo, I've heard about your name. I didn't think that you dared to tell even Zheng Wenxiao to fuck off. I'm really grateful for you today. How about I invite you to dinner? After Sume said this, she thought it would a huge honor that she was giving to Mo, who could make her invite that person to dinner. Those who want to invite her out could line up out of Ninghai City. In her mind, Mo should be agreeing to her with surprise and joy, and then follow behind her constantly thanking her for her invite. But what took her by surprise once again was that Mo actually stared at her with disgust. He didn't even reply before turning for the library. It was as though she was just a gust of air. This left a dumbfounded Sume outside under the sun. After Mo went into the library for a while, Sume finally reacted. This guy would treat her like this. Since when did she receive such cold treatment? And it was she who invited him to dinner. Being ignored by such a trash of a person, she felt like she just ate a fly as her face switched from being pale and red. No, regardless, she couldn't lose her face. She just didn't believe that she couldn't invite Mo. Thinking about this, Sume also walked into the library. Although it was Saturday, there were still a lot of people in the library. There weren't even spare seats left. Sume saw Mo as soon as she came into the library. He was standing next to a row of medical books, flipping through one of them. Sume sneered at how Mo was pretending to learn medicine, but couldn't even get a seat. She was really contemptuous towards Mo. But as soon as Sume walked into the library, there were a few handsome guys fighting to give her a seat. It was an honor to have Sume sit next to them. She was the prettiest girl in Ninghai University. Other people who came in didn't have a seat, but Sume could choose her seat. She chose a place where she could just see Mo. Just a smile from her made a handsome guy stunned for a while. Sume took a random book to read, but was actually spying on Mo. In her eyes, Mo came in to be pretentious. He wouldn't last half an hour before leaving. But unexpectedly, quite a few half an hour passed, but Mo still didn't have the slightest intentions of leaving and didn't seem to want to find a place to sit either. His reading speed was very fast, and he just stood by the medical bookshelf. Each hour, he would switch up to 3 to 4 books, and Sume could see very clearly that Mo read each book very fast, but it was from the start to end without leaving a single page out. However, the rate at which he flipped pages was too fast. Keep pretending. With that flipping speed, it would be hasty just to look at the title, much less see the content and understand it. Mo was already immersed in these medical publications. The medical facility of Ninghai University was quite famous, so their medical book collection here was quite complete. However, What disappointed Yemo was that although there were unique aspects, they didn't really extend out of the box. Whether it was Western of Chinese medicine, they were all the same. Despite so, he still remembered every information he read. His memory was strong originally, and now that he was stage 1 chi gathering, he was developing some spirit sense. Therefore, he didn't waste much time at all reading these books. The contents of these were a far cry from cultivation technique contents. If he was in foundation establishment state, he could read all the medical books in 5 hours. If he was in the golden pill state, he could read all the books in the library in 3 hours. If he was in essence fetus state, he didn't even need to go into the library. He only needed to scan with his spirit sense, and everything here would be read. Books were books after all. The contents were far from the contents inside a Eugene. However, how would essence fetus state be possible? Even in his past life, he was only a foundation establishment cultivator. TL note, /Eugene. For easy remembrance, I shall call it Jade script from now. You can search the Chinese on Google Images for what it looks like. Is something used to carve writing before paper was invented. It is something like a sushi mat except the wooden sticks are long rectangular bamboo. Basically means it is made out of jade. In the Xinxia context, information is inscribed inside the jade itself, just like how information is inscribed into crystal in Superman. Meanwhile, Sume was growing tired of waiting. It was already 3 in the afternoon, but Yemo was still reading and didn't even eat lunch. Because she had to keep watch over him, she could only starve as well. She couldn't understand why she had to make him listen to herself. It was just inviting out for dinner, but when he rejected her, she felt very uncomfortable. Just when Sume could no longer endure any longer, Yemo finally put down the book in his hands and walked out of the library. Seeing this, Sume immediately followed him outside. What else do you want? Yemo's voice was very cold. Obviously, he knew Sume was following him. Huh. Sume was stunned by Yemo's words but quickly reacted and said, "It's this. Because you helped me in the morning, I genuinely want to invite you out for food. I don't want to owe you, otherwise, I would feel very, very." Yemo stared coldly at Sume once and sighed in his heart. Only those women who thought they were princess would have such condescending self-satisfaction. She would think at all the consequences that her actions would bring to others. All she could think about was her superiority. Complicated substitute. Complicated substitute in her eyes. She probably thought that after she invited him to dinner, she wouldn't owe him. Instead, he would be owing her. Yemo did not like these girls who were so up of themselves at all. You mean to say that because you feel you owe me, so you want to invite me for food, is that right? Yemo asked blandly. Yes, just like that. Sume finally felt happy after Yemo understood what she meant. She felt as though she was relieved. How much are you willing to spend for inviting me to food? Yemo's words fazed Sume for a bit. Ugh. I was thinking of going to the Ju-Wei restaurant in the school for a meal. It should be around 300. Although she didn't understand what Yemo's words mean, she was still able to react. Oh, do you have $200 cash on you right now? Yemo looked at Sume still expressionlessly. Sume sneered in her mind. What are you pretending? Pretending to be cool, and yet you're asking to borrow my money. It looked those flowers were indeed for someone else. He probably acted like this because I took your flowers. She was still thinking about whether to invite him to dinner after lending the money to him or not. She wasn't expecting this money to be returned anyways. I'm thinking that since it'll be $300 for a mean and I would probably eat about 2/3, that would be $200, and you have given that to me, meaning that you have already invited me for food. Now, we don't owe each other anything. Don't disturb me anymore. Yemo took the $200 and turned to leave. You. Sume caught on to reality after a long while. There was actually this type of people in the world. She was so furious that she almost couldn't breathe. Who did he think he was? An impotent man acting like he was top shit. Did he forget that he was impotent? What made Yemo curious was that he had already finished eating at school and still didn't find anyone suspicious following him. He didn't think that Zheng Wenxiao would let things go like this. It seemed that he really has patience. Just when Yemo went back to his residence, he saw Su Wei with a face full of worry walking around the outside of his room. So, he asked with curiosity, Sue, what's wrong? You look like an ant on a stove. Yemo, you're finally back. Can you help me out? I'm really have something urgent today, but I agreed to help Zhou take her night shift. As soon as Sue saw Yemo, she immediately became overjoyed and walked up to him. What can I help you with? Yemo asked curiously. It's like this. I was supposed to take Zhou Yun's shift today, but now I have something urgent. Can you take the shift for me? It's only a few hours, and you can finish at 12 a.m. Sue said with an urgent face. Yemo had black lines down his head and was almost speechless. I'm a jobless person, and you want me to take your shift in the hospital? Do you have a fever? Didn't you say you know some medicine? In actual fact, you can still take the shift for me even if you don't know anything because my job at night is just to measure body temperature. You only need to take a thermometer and give it to the patients and they can measure it themselves. Then you can just record it and according to the temperature, put them on the waiting list. I'll give Xiaowu a call later and ask her to teach you. You can learn it in a few minutes. After Sue finished, he looked at Yemo with hopeful eyes. Yemo looked Sue speechlessly. It was really simple. Yemo had a good impression of Sue who invited him for dinner, so he thought and said, I can help you, but what if a manager checks and found out about it? Don't worry, the managers won't go to the reception. There are definitely no managers at night, and even if they do go for checks, it would be at the specialization wards. On top of that, you'll be wearing a face mask. Who would know who you really are? Sue said with certainty. Yemo thought to himself, of course I won't worry. Even if they find out I didn't work there, the one who gets punished isn't me. Seeing that Yemo agreed, Sue gave her lanyard card to Yemo and hurried packing up her bag before leaving. Seeing as how she was calling as she was walking with her eyebrows frowned, Yemo knew that she was probably in some really sticky situation. Just in case, Yemo still brought his little medical kit. He didn't think that the medical kit he prepared for his stall, which hadn't been used before, was used for the first time in a proper hospital. Probably because Sue rung Xiaowu before. Xiaowu pulled down her mouth mask asked soon as Yemo came to Likang Hospital reception, You are Yemo, right? Wear your white gown first. Let me tell you, it's very easy. This is the record and thermometer. Just leave everything else to me. Yemo then understood how easy it really was, and there weren't much patients at night. Even if he didn't come, Xiaowu could probably have managed herself. We're just afraid that we will get a sudden burst of patients at night and I won't be able to manage. Then we will get complained by patients. It is very serious matter if a patient complained about a doctor not coming. Zhou Yun is still in her trial period, and that is all the more reason she must come. Usually, it's little children who come at night, either in a cold or fever. Xiaowei seemed to see Yemo's confusion and explained. Yemo had understood. The reason that he was needed to take the shift was because they were afraid of patient complaints saying that there was only one person at reception. In that case, the one who didn't come would be punished severely. Xiaowu was a girl with a round face and had 2 dimples when she smiled. She looked amicable. As expected, just past 6 p.m., the patients started to increase, and it was just as Xiaowu said, they were mostly some little children either having a cold or fever. If it was just Xiaowu by herself, she really wouldn't be able to take care of things. At around 11 p.m., everyone was basically finished work, and the hospital started to quieten down, leaving Yemo and Xiaowu some free time. When Xiaowu saw there weren't much people left, she said to Yemo, I'll go get something to eat. I have a night shift. Do you want anything? Yemo waved his hand. He wasn't hungry yet. Seeing Xiaowu walk out, he also carried his medical briefcase to the toilet. The reason he did so was because he understood how much the contents of it was worth. There were people coming and going at the reception, although it was at night, but if someone just took it for convenience, then his few days of hard work and tens of thousands of dollars spent would have all been for nothing. You come with me. I have some things that I need you to help with. A middle-aged doctor wearing a white gown coincidentally met Yemo, who just came out of the toilet, and stopped him. Yemo didn't even want to pay attention to this guy, but after thinking about how his tone sounded like a supervisor or something, and if he knew he was taking a shift for Sue, then he would probably give Sue a hard time. Never mind. I'll think of it as helping Sue. The doctor took Yemo to the emergency ward and asked, Which ward are you from? Yemo thought with this guy's age, if he told him which ward he was, he would probably know. If he happened to say the wrong one, it wouldn't good. Therefore, he could only say, "I'm here because..." Before Yemo could find an excuse, this doctor's phone started ringing. He picked up and only said a few sentences before getting angry. He had an argument through the phone for quite a while before hearing him say, "Divorce then, you shameless." Finishing his call, this middle-aged man couldn't be bothered with Yemo anymore. He took his clothes off and took a bag before turning to leave. Yemo thought to himself, "This guy really does what he likes." He leaves before finishing time and argues about divorce with his wife. It was only 11 p.m., but Yemo was also speechless. The doctor called him here and then left before even telling him anything. No wonder this guy's wife was divorcing him. Just when Yemo stood up, a nurse and a 20-year-old girl walked a 60-year-old elderly here. Yemo could tell by their footsteps that the situation was urgent. "Who are you? Where is Dr. Chui?" Although Yemo had a mouth mask, this nurse could tell he wasn't Dr. Chui with just one glance and asked worriedly, "Oh, he just left and I'm taking a shift for someone. It's 4. Before Yemo finished saying he was taking a shift for Zhou Yun, this nurse interrupted him. "Then hurry up and give this elderly a checkup. He feels pain everywhere and can't even talk anymore." The nurse helped the elderly with a pale face to the bed and was ready to assist him in the procedures. Yemo looked at the elderly laying on the bed. When he first came, he seemed to be barely able to walk, but now he was already unconscious. His face was conspicuously changing into purple-pink. Yemo looked at the elderly laying on the bed. When he first came, he seemed to be barely able to walk, but now he was already unconscious. His face was conspicuously changing into purple-pink. He looked at the worried nurse and that even more worried girl. Before he even had the chance to talk, the girl whimpered and said, "Doctor, please save my grandpa. It's my fault. I shouldn't have let him come to Ninghai secretly." Yemo frowned. Talking about whether she should have or should not was complete bullshit now. He took out a few silver needles from the case and pierced the old man a few times. His chi immediately flowed into the old man's body. The old man exhaled a clotted breath as the purple color started to disappear from his face rapidly. In the blink of an eye, everything returned to normal. He opened his eyes and said, "Ching Air, don't worry, this has been an old problem now." The nurse and the girl called Ching Air stared at Yemo in shock and couldn't get a hold of themselves for a long while. What medical skills was this? Saving an old man on the border of death with just a few needles? The nurse reacted first. She still had a face full of shock looking as she looked at Yemo's mask. She was thinking who this substitute for Dr. Chui was. His medical skills are amazing. But that other girl also came to reality and immediately rushed beside the old man's bedside. "Grandpa, you scared me. I won't ever dare to bring you out on my own accord again." Before she even finished speaking, tears had already flowed out. Yemo looked at this girl. She was covered in expensive branded clothes. Donna Karen top was probably worth tens of thousands already, and the pair of shoes she wore seemed to be from Chanel. Yemo's first impression was that this was a wealthy girl. Then she looked at the girl who still had tears left on her face. She was extremely beautiful. He could already imagine how much prettier she would be when she becomes mature. It felt she was equally as pretty as the woman who bought Yemo's charms last time. Perhaps due to worry, her face had a tinge of rubiness which further complemented her snow-white skin and neck. This prompted Yemo to look further down. A deep valley complemented by the perfectly suited Donna Karen further provoked people's imaginations. "Ching Air, I'm fine. Help me sit up." The old man waved and said, "You are quite an astounding doctor. I know my condition. There has been no one who could help me wake up in such a short time." Before the old man finished talking, the girl called Ching Air seemed to have thought of something. She turned around and looked at Yemo in shock as she spoke. "I didn't think your medical skills were so astounding. Are you a Chinese medicine doctor? You use golden needles? Can you see what my grandpa's condition is? We were lucky to have you this time. I'm truly grateful." She threw out a series of questions. However, this girl didn't prepare for an answer from this doctor because her grandpa's condition had been seen by many other overseas and renowned specialists, but they all could diagnose the exact condition. They just gave the old man a notice that he had half a year left to live based on the unexplained rapid aging of his organs. She just asked this subconsciously. She was mainly grateful towards this doctor for saving her grandpa. Luckily, Likang Hospital was close otherwise. The consequences would have really been unfathomable. If something happened to her grandpa, not only would she be very sad, but also, she wouldn't be able to take the responsibility for it. Although she was her grandpa's favorite granddaughter, there were too much things and people connected with her grandpa's life. Guillermo nodded and said, "I know what condition this is." Of course he knew of this condition, but he also knew that Earth didn't have the exact conclusion to the cause of this disease. Therefore, he was sure that the old man's exact condition still hadn't been diagnosed yet, because this disease was too rare. It was almost 1 in a trillion. In the cultivation realm, there was a mineral rock called purple coral. Purple coral was a type of mineral that could be used to make middle-grade magical artifacts. However, it wasn't commonly seen. But purple coral had a special feature, and that was after mining this rock, it must be stored with a jade box, or it would lose its powers. If someone left purple coral in their pocket, then in a day's time, the harmful substances in purple coral would seep into the body and the purple coral would become a useless piece of rock. It was obvious that this old man was poisoned by purple coral. He knew this when he used acupuncture just then. Those who are poisoned by purple coral couldn't see the symptoms immediately. If the body was healthy, the symptoms would start appearing 10 years or even decades later. But if the symptoms started occurring and it wasn't treated right, then death would be the only way for them. The symptom of purple oral poisoning was the body showing purple everywhere and the organs gradually aging into something coral-like until eventually dying of suffocation. This old man had the typical symptoms of purple coral poisoning. If Guillermo wasn't a cultivator, he could remove the poison slowly with herbs. However, Guillermo was a stage 1 qi gathering cultivator. He only needed to use qi to remove it. However, Guillermo just didn't expect Earth to have such a mineral. If he could acquire it, it would be rather pleasing. "What? You said you know what my grandpa's condition is? Doctor, can you cure him? As long as you can treat my grandpa, I will do anything you ask." The girl called Qing Air finally reacted after some time. When she was speaking, her hands were even shaking. The old man also had a face of almost disbelief. It was already astounding that this young doctor could make him wake up. He didn't think that he would know what his condition was. This was too absurd. The medical standards of Ninghai City Likang Hospital were this high already? Even an emergency doctor knew of his condition? Was this possible? She would do anything? Guillermo smiled. He was going to take this girl's words. But he also knew that this girl's family was probably very wealthy. In that case, he didn't need to hold himself back. He needed money, and it was also fair that he got some money. Thinking about this, Guillermo said the nurse who still had her mouth wide open in shock, "You can leave for now. I need to have a talk with the patient and his family." After the nurse left, Guillermo knocked the table and contemplated for a while before saying, "I can cure this disease." Splay. The girl called Qing Air dropped her phone and the battery flew out, but she didn't seem to feel it at all that her phone was possibly broken by that drop. "Doctor, can you really cure my grandpa's disease? Can you really?" Qing Er didn't have the slightest attention for her phone. Instead, she rushed in front of Guillermo and grabbed his hands and asked with nervousness. The old man also looked at Guillermo with a face full of shock. He didn't think that Guillermo was lying because Guillermo's actions before had already proved that he was a very capable doctor. Since he said so, it must mean that he knew how to cure him. Qing Er, don't be so excited. Sit down and talk first." Guillermo enjoyed having his hands grabbed by a beautiful girl. This Qing Er was even prettier than that Su Mei. If this Qing Er went to Ninghai University, then Su Mei would have to give over her title of the prettiest girl in Ninghai University. The main thing was, Qing Er didn't make people uncomfortable like Su Mei. Seeing that the doctor also called her Qing Er, the girl blushed and let go of Guillermo's hands and sat by the old man softly. She didn't know that Guillermo didn't know what her actual name was and just called her as the old man called her. TL note. Adding "er" to the first name of someone is an intimate way of referring to the person. It is usually only used between parents and children or between lovers. The old man laughed, seeing his granddaughter being shy. Obviously, he felt the situation was quite interesting. Do you want to cure the symptoms or cure the disease? Yemo suddenly asked. What does curing the symptoms involve and what does curing the disease involve? Of course, I want to completely cure my grandpa. Seeing that Yemo came back to the topic of treatment, Ching Er's ruddiness on her face retreated and immediately asked. Meanwhile, she thought to herself, this doctor's eyes are really bright. Pity I can't see his face. Yemo said, with my current ability, if it's curing the disease, I only have a 70% chance of success. The other 30% is your grandpa dying early. If it's curing the symptoms, then I have 100% success chance, and that can let your grandpa live healthily for another 3 years. No matter which treatment you choose, you must pay the treatment fees right now. The medicine belongs to me. No owing. Although Yemo was a bit conservative saying 70% chance, it was still according to his current power. Although his medical skills were good, his only had the power of stage 1 chi gathering. If he reached stage 2, then he would have a 90% chance. If he was stage 3, then he would have 100% chance. How could this be? Grandpa. The Ching Er girl obviously couldn't make the decision and looked at her grandpa with a troubled look. She hoped her grandpa could give her a good idea. Hearing Yemo's words, there was a sliver of astute flashing across the old man's eyes. Although he knew Yemo was capable, he still didn't quite believe that Yemo could completely cure him. Furthermore, this guy asks for money straight away without any medical morals. Hearing Yemo's words, there was a sliver of astute flashing across the old man's eyes. Although he knew Yemo was capable, he still didn't quite believe that Yemo could completely cure him. Furthermore, this guy asks for money straight away without any medical morals. In the medical field, 70% success was already quite significant. However, Yemo said he had 70% chance of curing him with ease. This moved the old man's confidence for Yemo. However, thinking about how he only had a few months to live even if he didn't receive treatment, it was only some money lost if he wasn't cured. However, it wasn't going to be easy trying to trick his money, and thus the old man said, "You say you don't have 100% chance of success. Then when can you have 100% chance to successfully treat me?" 3 years. Yemo smiled blandly and said. Yemo thought in his mind that when his silver heart grass was ready for harvest, he should be able to reach stage 3 chi gathering no matter what. Although he didn't understand the old man's intentions for his question, he knew that the old man was getting doubtful of him. However, he didn't care. He only had this chance of earning money anyways. He wouldn't foolishly tell others about himself even if he didn't earn this money. Yemo already knew what sort of place this was. If someone found out he had special arts that couldn't be explained by the science here, nothing good would come out of it. With his current strength, he couldn't even run away. He was well aware of the power the government held. Thus, he could only earn his money in secret and couldn't publicize his abilities. Otherwise, he would probably be dissected like a lab rat. Then I'll choose curing the symptoms, but how much money do you need? We don't have any right now, so we can only ask people to transfer you after you cure me, or you can come and get it with us. The old man was beginning to lose his newfound hope. He was already sure that this doctor was a fraud, because who would believe that the disease he couldn't cure now can be cured 3 years later? The reason he still wanted Yemo to try was because Yemo woke him up with just a few needles, and this gave him the intentions of trying it out. On top of that, he also wanted to know if this doctor was going to cheat him. He worked at Likang Hospital. He can run away, but the hospital can't. Yemo immediately refused the old man's suggestions. Without a certain amount of power, he wouldn't expose his abilities. The human heart was devious. He had seen it all too many times. It could be said that other than his master Luoing, he wouldn't trust anyone. Plus, he didn't believe it at all that the girl didn't have money on her. How could someone as rich as her not have a single card? The old man's face immediately looked bad. There was actually this kind of doctors. Regardless of whether he was a fraud, how could he be requesting for money like how Hades wants souls before he even treated him? This was no longer of bad medical morals. He had no medical morals. Grandpa, I heard all the doctors now are like that. They don't want to treat without money. Don't get angry. The girl called Ching Er felt better since her grandpa's condition got better and instead came to comfort him. How much money for curing the symptoms? Ching Er wasn't dumb. Although she could tell Yimo had some abilities, this person was quite possibly bluffing. But facing the only one who claimed can treat her grandfather, she didn't want to miss this opportunity. 200,000. Yimo estimated that this girl's clothes were probably worth 200,000, so asking 200,000 was probably easy for her. Meanwhile, the girl became a bit frustrated. She only had 50,000 altogether. Yet, this guy asked for 200,000. Did he ask for this much based on the value of her clothes? However, she didn't buy her clothes and she couldn't afford it as well. It was given to her by her auntie. I only have 50,000 and it's all in here. The password is 880521. The girl gave her only card to Yimo. Yimo took the card and looked at the girl once. He thought to himself that she was being really stingy. His heart protection pill was already worth more than 50,000. But 50,000 will do. He didn't care that much about it. With this 50,000, he wouldn't have to worry about money again for the time being. He took the card, didn't waste any time. He opened his medical case and took out a black pill and gave it to the old man. Eat this heart protection pill and then I'll help you with acupuncture. What medicine is that? Heart protection pill? Why does it look so ugly? Don't tell me you are one of those Chinese medicine street doctors. This is Likong Hospital. Ching Er blocked Yimo's hand and said worriedly, if you don't want the treatment, I'll give the card back to you immediately. Yimo said displeased. The old man looked at Yimo's eyes and waved his hand. Ching Er, move aside. Give me the pill, I'll eat it. The old man took the pill and ate it without any hesitation. He sighed. He wasn't afraid of death, but if he could really live for another 3 years, then he could settle a lot of things smoothly. Otherwise, if he suddenly died, his family might erupt into chaos and even start down the road to failure, and that wasn't something he wanted to see. Although he was 90% sure Yimo was a fraud, he still wanted to try as long as there was 10% hope. Seeing the old man eat the pill, Yimo nodded and made the old man lay down as he begun his acupuncture. Ching Er, who was already doubtful of Yimo, grew more doubtful of him after seeing him take out the black pill. But after seeing Yimo's acupuncture speed and her grandpa's gradually widening face, she began to have hopes for Yimo again. Although she hadn't seen acupuncture before in real life, she had seen it on TV. Normally, acupuncture was a slow and careful procedure. Meanwhile, this doctor was so fast that you could barely see the after images of his hand. This was the main reason she had her hopes up again. Until at last, her doubt for Yimo had disappeared completely because Yimo's forehead was covered in sweat beads. Suddenly, the young girl started to worry again because she saw her grandpa's complexion. There was some pain. Just when she wanted to ask, Yimo suddenly grabbed the old man and flipped his body as he palmed the old man's back. Spew. The old man spat out a globule of thick, dark, and clotted liquid. Yimo gasped and said to the girl, your grandpa is fine now. There won't be any problems in 3 years. Tell the nurse to come in and clean up. I'm leaving. Before the girl could reply, he carried his little medical case and left. When Ching Er finally caught on and chased out, Yimo had already disappeared. Grandpa, Ching Er hurried back into the emergency room. She suspected that Yimo was someone who cheated and ran. Perhaps he wasn't even from the Likong Hospital. When they just came in, the nurse said that he wasn't Dr. Chui. Now she remembered, but she couldn't chase up to him anymore. The old man had recovered and wiped his mouth with a cloth. His eyes were peculiar and looked at the young girl and said, this doctor isn't a fraud. I really feel the lightness in my body. It's not like the burden it was before. I didn't think that there would be such a magical doctor. Go ask the nurse later what the doctor is called. We must get to know someone like this. Chapter 14. He doesn't exist. Chapter 14. He doesn't exist. Yimo returned to his living place, but Suwei hadn't come back yet. Although he helped take her shift, he also earned tens of thousands of dollars, which was something to celebrate for Yimo, who had almost run out of money. However, this sort of thing could only be done once. Otherwise, his identity might get exposed. Right now, he didn't have the ability for self-defense. Revealing his identity and some of his powers right now weren't the smartest thing to do. This world should be far more dangerous than it appeared to be. Su Wei came back the second day. Her eyes looked red and swollen. Something seemed to have happened, but Emo wasn't that close with her, so he didn't ask her what had happened. In the following days, other than going to school, Emo cultivated and practiced martial arts. Because he had earned more money, he postponed setting up a stall in the night market again. Emo found it to be strange that ever since Sume suffered from his treatment last time, she didn't come looking for him again. But this was for the better anyway, and saved Emo a lot of trouble. What Emo didn't know was that some people were looking for him now. Other than Su Jingwen, who bought the charms from him, there was also the old man he saved at the hospital. On top of that, even Wang Peng was looking for him because ever since the charm-selling guy kicked him, his wrist didn't have any strength left. As soon as he tensed it, it would dislocate, and even after relocating it, it would still behave the same way. Nevertheless, even the old man saved by Emo was turning the entire Li Kong hospital over and still couldn't find someone called Emo. It was though this person just appeared and disappeared from thin air. Not only was Dr. Chui questioned, they even gathered all the doctors and nurses in the Li Kong hospital and asked, but they just could not find that doctor who carried the medical case. Xiao Wu was suspicious of Emo because that event occurred when he was taking the shift. However, she didn't notice if Emo carried a small case with him, and when she had learned from Su Wei that Emo was a jobless nomad, she had lost all of her suspicions. If it weren't for the old man's identity and the fact that his disease was actually cured, people would have thought that this whole thing was fabricated by them. Su Jingwen's mood had been great recently. Not only was her mother's condition cured, that annoying Wang Peng hadn't appeared lately as well. Even her father, who always pressured her to get closer with Wang Peng, didn't say anything. Su Jingwen was grateful towards the person who sold her the charm from the bottom of her heart. He helped her change everything. 1-1. Did you find that person who sold you the charm? A calm yet aristocratic-looking woman who sat beside her asked. 1-1 was, of course, Su Jingwen, and that mature lady was her mother. Ever since Su Jingwen's mom awoke, Su Jingwen would spend time with her mom whenever she could. After the shock from the spirit-cleansing charm last time, Su Jingwen's family had been trying hard to find Emo. Not only did Su Jingwen and her mom try to find him, but even Su Jingzhong was trying to find this magical person. Although she already paid for that charm, they understood now that the money she gave him was probably not even worth the charm. It was because she recognized the rarity of Emo's charms that Su Jingwen stored the remaining charm carefully and kept it by herself. The reason she wanted to find Emo was because she wanted to compensate him with more money. Nothing. I've been to see Treasure Garden many times, but haven't seen him once. It seems that the Wang family is also looking for him, and I'm afraid he might get into trouble with them, replied Su Jingwen. Emo's figure with shades and a low-rim hat had already appeared in her mind countless times. The mature lady smiled and said, Jingwen, do you think someone as magical as him would be afraid of the Wang family? You don't need to worry, just try to notice him in the future. If you see him again, you must bring him back. I must thank him personally. But even if he doesn't want to come, you must still treat him well. Su Jingwen had great curiosity towards Emo in her heart, and ever since she started to wear the ghost-repelling charm, she felt much more comfortable at heart. There were also countless times when she wanted to test the fireball charm, but she resisted the temptations as she only had one, and there would be no more if she used it. Of course, Emo didn't know that there were so many people looking for him, but even if he knew, he would pretend that he didn't. He had quite some money right now, but the things he needed for cultivation couldn't be solved in a few days' time. And with money, he didn't even need to go to the night market, so he was living very comfortably. He would spend every day between home and school. His life couldn't be simpler. However, when he walked out the library today, Emo felt that someone was following him. When he walked out of the school, this feeling grew more intense. In a corner not far from the gates of the school, Emo immediately saw a parked Range Rover which seemed to have more than one person inside, and they were all paying attention to him. Emo jeered. It appeared that he was stalked by the people in this car. Ever since reincarnating here, Emo had been keeping a low profile. Usually, if no one came looking for trouble with him, he wouldn't look for trouble with others either. His only problem right now was with this guy called Zheng Wenxiao, so it seemed that the people on this car might be related to that Zheng Wenxiao. Emo was wondering whether he should walk up to them or lead them to a distant place and beat these people up when two yellow-haired youth got out of the Range Rover. These two youth walked up to Emo and stared at him with a slanted eye. After some time, one of them said, "You are Emo? We need you to come with us. You cannot refuse because if you do, you will die painfully." Emo smiled. He overestimated this Zheng Wenxiao. He could only get a few lackeys to do his dirty work. The two youth blocked Emo and kept him in the middle, obviously preventing Emo's escape. Just when they thought Emo was going to refuse and prepared to teach him a lesson first, unexpectedly, Emo said, "Lead the way." Phased for a bit, one of the yellow-haired youth reacted and looked at Emo. "You've got balls." Emo didn't care what these two yellow-haired were saying and just followed them at a normal pace into their Range Rover. It was as though these two people were really here to greet him. When Su Jingwen drove her car to the front gates of the Ninghai University, she saw Emo apprehended into the car by two blondes and shook her head. Of course, she knew that this student must have offended someone and was taken away. However, these things happened every day, and there wasn't anything she could do about it. However, when she scanned across Emo's face, her heart moved as she started wondering why this person was so familiar to her. She realized that she had probably seen his figure somewhere, and he had this indescribable temperament. She should have seen him before and even talked to him. Su Jingwen saw someone she potentially knew, and of course couldn't just neglect what she saw. No matter what, she needed to at least confirm his identity. Su Jingwen immediately called the police and told them the direction the Range Rover took as it turned and followed them in her car, but she didn't dare to follow too closely as she was afraid of being discovered by the car ahead. She followed them from afar and took out a pair of binoculars to look at the Range Rover. As expected, the Range Rover kept driving farther and farther away and was nearly in the rural areas. Su Jingwen knew that these people wanted to find a faraway place to deal with the student which could lead to his death. Right now, the Range Rover was already shaking. Perhaps these people were already torturing him, so she was getting worried, but the police still hadn't arrived. After the Range Rover had gone for another 10 minutes or so, the shaking was getting fiercer by the moment. Jingwen's worry grew and grew until a police vehicle finally drove over at a moderate pace. Chapter 15. Sent to Police Station. Chapter 15. Sent to police station. Before reaching their destination, Emo had to begin educating the hoodlums earlier because one of them had decided to attack him first. There were only 5 people in the Range Rover including the driver, and none of them could withstand Emo's beatings. However, in a short moment, all the hoodlums bowed before Emo's feet with broken arms or legs, except for the one driving, who only received 2 slaps across the face. This was because Emo understood that he couldn't just kill people here. Otherwise, he wasn't totally sure if he wouldn't kill these hoodlums. Emo was wondering how the police car came so fast since, from the beginning to the end, he didn't allow even one of the hoodlums to pick up their phones. He didn't believe that Zheng Wenxiao would be so nice as to call the cops for him, so he felt uneasy. Naturally, the person who called the police gave them precise details, and the police car caught up with the Range Rover really quickly, pulling it over. Emo looked at the hoodlums that were moaning in the car and said coldly, "Go back and tell Zheng Wenxiao that I will come and find him," as he got off of the Range Rover. "What happened? Wasn't it you who called the police?" 2 police officers got off their car. The one speaking was a middle-aged police officer whose face was dark due to smoking and had a look of impatience plastered on his face. "I didn't make the report, but these people really kidnapped me. I resisted, and this is the result. I suppose it must have been some good Samaritan who called the police," as Emo pointed at the hoodlums lying in the car and explained. "You brother, it was this guy who forcefully went into my car and forced me to drive to the rural district as he punched and kicked the few of us." The driver, who was the only one who could still walk, saw the black-faced police officer and behaved immediately as though he saw his own dad. He immediately started to talk as he pointed at Emo with his finger. The black-faced police turned his head, looked at the yellow-haired driver, and nodded his head. It was obvious that he knew this yellow-haired person. Guillermo sneered inside his heart, as he could tell from the way the police was addressed that there was something between this guy and the hoodlum. As expected, before Guillermo finished thinking, the black-faced cop stared coldly at Guillermo, then turned his head to the driver and asked, "You said he forced his way into your car and even beat you? Did he want to rob your car in broad daylight?" Yes. This person wanted to steal our car and beat us up. If it had been just a while longer, he would have definitely thrown us off the car and drive my Range Rover away." This driver was unkempt due to being slapped by Guillermo in the face twice. Now that he received a hint, he quickly told the black-faced police that Guillermo wanted to rob the car. Guillermo didn't say anything. He had the thought of killing these few people and leaving, but he knew that with his current power state, it would be a dream to escape the government's strong search network. However, he was quite annoyed at whoever called the police. "You're suspected of attempted robbery and assault and battery. I need you to come with me to the police station." As the black-faced police officer was talking, his hands were already on his gun. This young person beat those few people up, meaning that he practiced martial arts, so he had to be wary. The younger police frowned and moved his lips, but eventually didn't say anything. Guillermo didn't want to kill them and run, so he could only follow the police onto the police car. However, he thought to himself that if someone tried to harm him illegally, he would run immediately. He only needed to go back and dig out that silver heart grass. Eventually, he would one day come back and seek revenge. Su Jingwen found things were strange when she looked through the pair of binoculars. The police came but instead took away that student-like youth. Meanwhile, the Range Rover just drove away. This seemed too odd to overlook. When she called the police, she had said very clearly that those few hoodlums on the car wanted to abduct the student, but how was the final result like this? At that moment, Su Jingwen finally remembered where she had seen the student with the familiar figure. He was actually the young person who sold her the charms. Although he was wearing shades and a duck mouth-shaped hat at the time, his figure seemed very close to this student taken away by the police, so there was a chance that it was him. Regardless, Su Jingwen decided to have a look first. The police car drove back to the police station, and the black-faced police signaled to the two young police officers with his eyes and said, "Let him rest for a bit, we'll submit his charges later." Guillermo narrowed his eyes and didn't say anything. He already understood that this black-faced cop wouldn't be so nice since it was him who accused Guillermo of attempted robbery and assault and battery. As expected, he wasn't taken to the restroom and was instead pushed inside a large temporary detention center for prisoners. When Guillermo came inside, there were already 7 or 8 people. However, 4 men were surrounding each other. They were all very bulky, and from the tattoos on their arms, it could be seen that these were fierce men. The other few people crouched in the corners and only peeked one glance at Guillermo before paying no further attention to him. Very soon, Guillermo reached the conclusion that this cell wasn't made for keeping prisoners. It must only be temporary. There would probably be another place for locking them up after confirming their charges. Guillermo looked at the 4 strong men and knew why the black-faced policeman locked him in here. He probably wanted them to beat him up first. Seeing the reserved-looking Guillermo come in, the 4 men immediately turned their eyes and stared closely at Guillermo unexpectedly. He waited for a while, and the 4 men turned their eyes back. No one came looking for trouble. One of them had a knife scar on his chin. Quite obviously, he was the leader of the 4. Guillermo saw the scarred man signal to the people around him with his eyes, and they returned to talking. Guillermo only shot these people a few glances and didn't have any interest in them again. He was looking at this prison cell and thinking about the method he could use if he wanted to escape. However, Guillermo's hearing was very strong, and he heard one of the 4 men quietly talk. "Dao brother, why don't we give this little white face a beating and make him respect us?" The one talking was the slightly shorter man. "This guy isn't simple. Since we only have a few days before we are released, there's no need to start trouble. Those guys probably want us to beat this little white face, but I just won't do as they wish. Did you see, when he came in, he was fearless, and his eyes were also very cold. He is definitely someone strong. Remember, don't start trouble with him." The Dao brother with the knife scar on his chin immediately warned them. Emo looked around. He concluded that if he wanted to leave, this place really couldn't stop him. He felt relaxed at heart and decided to find a place to sleep first. However, Emo looked around the entire room, and the only relatively clean place was the bed where the guy with the knife scar was sitting, next to the window where the air was fresher. "Move over. I need to sleep for a while." Emo walked to the scarred leader and said something that made everyone's jaws drop in shock. "What did you say?" The knifed-scarred face man stood up in disbelief. He didn't look for trouble with Emo, but he came instead. Emo's voice turned cold suddenly. "I said I want you to move. I'm going to sleep. You didn't understand?" Chapter 16. Su Jingwen's Tantrum. Chapter 16. Su Jingwen's Tantrum, You're Asking to Die. Scarred Face swore and slapped his hands towards Emo's face. Originally, he saw that Emo wasn't someone easy to deal with and he was about to be released, so he didn't want trouble. But now Emo came provoking him. How could Scarred Face, who usually was the one bullying others, endure that? He raised his hand to slap Emo in the face. The rest of the people in the room were all laughing at Emo's calamity. The few men crouched up against the corner were all shaking their hands, thinking this guy was dumb. Scarred Face didn't start trouble with him, but instead, he goes up to start *T. He was looking to get beaten. However, the reality immediately hit them as the seemingly naive Emo grabbed Scarred Face's wrist and used his other hand to slap him a few times across the face. This wasn't the end of it as Emo kicked Scarred Face in the stomach. Not only did the strong-figured Scarred Face not have any means of retaliation, but he was actually kicked flying by Emo as he smashed onto the metal doors, making a crashing sound. The black-faced cop outside heard the banging noises, and a cold sneer tugged at the corner of his mouth as he immediately called someone. "Hello, young Master Zhang?" "Yes, it's me. That guy is locked up and is being taught a lesson by Scarred Face. It has nothing to do with us." "Oh, yes, I will let him have a good time before he goes to trial. I will make him shed a layer of skin." When Black-Faced heard there were voices outside, he immediately hung up and pretended to do his duty as he walked to the entrance. Scarred Face himself didn't even believe that he would be defeated so effortlessly. He had been in the mafia industry for many years, and immediately knew that Emo wasn't someone to be easily messed with. Although he looked ferocious, he wasn't an idiot. If he pissed Emo off, there wouldn't be anything good for him. This little white face was so strong that Scarred Face was sure that even if all four of them jumped him, they would still be no match for him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be provoking them. Emo walked slowly towards Scarred Face and said, "I want to sleep on the bed close to the window. Do you have any objections?" Originally, when Scarred Face saw Emo walk over, his heart was beating fast as he thought Emo was going to attack again, but he didn't think Emo just said he wanted to sleep on that bed. He felt relieved and said, no objections, please take the bed." Scarred Face saw the situation and immediately put on a smile. He even ignored the pain of being smashed against the metal door. Seeing how Scarred Face was so careful in giving a smile, the other few robust men didn't even dare to make a bigger sound. What a joke. The usually invincible Scarred Face didn't even have the ability to defend himself in front of this man. If they went looking for trouble with Emo now, this would be no different to ask for a beating. When Su Jingwen made her way towards the police station, the more she thought about the figure, the more she felt that he looked like the person who sold her the charms. This further made up her mind to bail the person out. But what took Su Jingwen by surprise was that the people from the police station actually refused to let her see Emo. He's not a prisoner. What right do you have to refuse? And what right do you have to lock him up? Although Su Jingwen didn't know the truth about the story, she definitely knew there was a problem. Otherwise, they wouldn't only take Emo to the police station and let the people from the Range Rover off free. Of course, she didn't know that the Range Rover was already parked outside the hospital. This person is involved in attempted robbery and assault and battery. We are still recording his charges. If you want to see him, come tomorrow. The black-faced cop saw that Su Jingwen had an upper-class temperament and was a beautiful woman, and thus tolerated her. Really? How come it isn't the same as what I saw? I clearly saw a Range Rover take my friend away. Eventually, nothing happens to the Range Rover, but my friend is taken to the police station. What is the meaning of this? Su Jingwen demanded. Don't say things you can't prove. This is the police station. We need evidence for everything. If you still try to mess around, I will arrest you for obstruction of police duties. The black-faced police officer didn't expect this woman to have witnessed the scene. Immediately, his face went taut, and his tone grew hard. So tough. I want to see how you are going to apprehend me. Su Jingwen's face suddenly grew cold. This arrogant officer was fabricating the truth. The youth that was taken in must not be in a good situation right now. You, come in with me and record your charges. I suspect you to be in the same group with the suspect of attempted robbery. The black-faced cop pointed his finger at Su Jingwen and said pointedly, Yimo's apparels didn't seem to be worth much. Since this woman appeared to be related to him, their background couldn't possibly be significant. He would show her who was the boss first. Are you a cop or a fugitive? Su Jingwen was angry. This person was too cocky. If you don't like it, you can report me. My name is Huang Shu. Please don't forget it, the black-faced cop said contemptuously. Captain Huang. The younger cop couldn't watch it any longer and walked up and called him. He felt that Captain Huang's actions were like that of a bandit, but he didn't dare to say much. Before Huang Shu said anything, another voice came through the door. Since when did our police department become a place for bandits? The sound was thick and had an irrefutable tone. Gung Suwa, Huang Shu and the younger cop both saw the person talking at the doorway and hurried to call out to him. What's this? The middle-aged man scanned Huang Shu and asked. Oh, you are CEO Su? Why are you here? The middle-aged man saw Su Jingwen with one glance and immediately realized who she was. You are the driver Gung Shuabin? How did you become a cop? Su Jingwen also recognized the person in front. A few years ago, he was her father's chauffeur. She didn't expect him to be a cop now and seemed to be the manager of this station. He had been climbing the ranks surprisingly fast. Yeah, I followed the arrangements of the authority. Oh, by the way, what happened just then? The middle-aged man remembered what had happened and immediately had a bad hunch. CEO Su was the daughter of Mayor Su. If she were mistreated on his territory, then he, Gung Shuabin, would be unable to explain himself. As soon as Gung Shuabin brought this matter up, Su Jingwen's face reverted to one of stern rigor and grunted. Someone abducted my friend, and after the intervention of police, they locked my friend up instead, while the abductors are nowhere to be seen. I came to see my friend, but they say that I'm also a suspect in the attempted robbery myself. He also said that if I'm not satisfied with that, I should report him. Are all the police so cocky nowadays? Huang Shu's face was already growing pale. Even his black-faced couldn't cover it up. He didn't think that this woman actually knew his manager. Although he was aware that young Master Qiao would eventually protect him, this would undoubtedly affect his path of climbing higher in the ranks. Did you say that just then? Is this the attitude of a police officer? Manager Gung hated this black-faced person. Normally, he did what he liked because he knew he was Zhang Wenqiao's person. Unfortunately, this time, he actually tried to frame the daughter of the mayor. Yes, I was just angry at that moment, but I didn't really have that thought in mind. Huang Shu didn't dare to lie. After all, there were quite a few people who heard what he said. Generally, no one would tell others what he had said, but today, he actually met someone who knew his manager. Remove his gun and immediately investigate this matter. Chenjin, you will be responsible for this. Find a conclusion to this affair quickly. The police are the guardians of the people, not hoodlums and cheaters. This manager took care of things quickly and even removed the Captain Huang's police badge in front of her. Su Jingwen knew he was doing it to pacify her, but she didn't say anything. Manager Gung, what you're doing is illegal. Even if you accuse me, you have no power to do anything to me. Seeing that Gung Wenbin was serious, this Captain Huang immediately became worried. He thought Gung Wenbin knew his connections with Zhang Wenqiao and was at most putting on an act. He didn't know Gung Wenbin was serious. CEO Su, let's go see your friend first. It's my disgrace to have such scum in the police department. Later, I will apologize to Mayor Su personally. Gung Wenbin didn't seem to hear Huang Shu's yells and didn't even bother to pay attention to him. He was very clear that even without the incident with Su Jingwen's friend, the things Black-Faced had done was enough for him to be in prison for a very long time. What? Mayor Su? Huang Shu was shocked. Thinking about Gung Wenbin's attitude to the woman and how he called her CEO Su, if he still didn't understand that this woman was connected to Mayor Su, then he would be a pig. If this woman was someone of Mayor Su, then even Zheng Wenxiao wouldn't have any means to save him. Immediately, Huang Shu's heart fell into an icy cover. Chapter 17. Got the wrong person? Chapter 17. Got the wrong person. Initially, Su Jingwen thought that Yimo would suffer a great deal being locked up. However, what made her astonished was that when they opened the retention center, Yimo was lazily laying on the bed and didn't even bother to take his shoes off. Meanwhile, a few robust men were standing carefully beside him. It was so quiet that it didn't seem like a temporary prison, but instead a classroom during night study. The metal door opened, and Yimo immediately understood what had happened after he saw Su Jingwen. It looked like that Su Jingwen saw him somewhere and possibly realized that he was the person who sold the charms to her, and therefore came to save him. Perhaps even the police call was made by her. However, if that was really her, then she was causing more trouble instead of helping him. Hello, you might know me. I'm Su Jingwen. When I saw you being taken away by some people at the entrance to Ninghai University, I called the police. When Su Jingwen saw that Yimo was all right, she immediately felt relieved in her heart. It wouldn't be surprising if it were really him since his charms were so powerful. How could he be afraid of a few hoodlums in here? Yimo thought to himself that things were exactly as he had thought. Su Jingwen was acting out of goodwill, so he wouldn't blame her. However, her words sounded like she wasn't too sure if he was the person who sold the charms to her or not. Since she wasn't sure, Yimo would definitely not admit it as he knew how much ruckus it would cause if he did. But now, he didn't even have the means to leave the police station and had even thought about killing and escaping. If someone with greater powers came down on him, there would be no good result for him since his powers were still too low. Yimo sighed in his heart. Seeing how Yimo was hesitating to say something, Su Jingwen hurried to say, "This isn't a place to talk, let's go." Gung Wenbin personally helped write down Yimo's released paper before sending Yimo and Su Jingwen to the front gate. Su Jingwen's car was a red Mercedes. When Yimo entered the car, he immediately felt that the smell was very pure. It was a faint woman's aroma. Yimo immediately knew that she rarely ever took people into her car or possibly never brought anyone in. But since Su Jingwen told him to get on, he wouldn't refuse. Could we enjoy a dinner together tonight? Su Jingwen already took Yimo as the master who sold her the charms, so her words were rather hospitable. After leaving school, Yimo still didn't eat anything. So when Su Jingwen invited him to dinner, he agreed casually. The restaurant Su Jingwen took Yimo to was called Westlake Family. This restaurant was relatively tranquil, and the decorations were very elegant. There weren't many people in the restaurant, making it very serene. When Yimo first stepped in, he immediately felt this place was a good place to eat. Usually, he ate from fast food restaurants on the side of the road and wasn't fussed about what he ate. Jingwen, long time no see, a plump yet elegant woman saw Su Jingwen come in and immediately came up with a smile. "Sister Fong, I had some things recently and were not able to come over. Today I brought a friend over for dinner. Is there a private room available?" Su Jingwen smiled. She spoke casually, and it was clear that she was quite familiar with this Sister Fong. Hearing Su Jingwen's words, this lady with an elegant temperament glanced at Yimo once curiously, but then immediately pretended that it was nothing as she said, "Yes, the good friend room is still available." Sister Fong wasn't very pretty, but the mass in front of her chest was quite huge, and she had a pair of peach flower eyes. Usually, this type of women gave people a sense of flirtatiousness, but Sister Fong's elegant manner showed people that she was a well-educated woman, and the element of flirtatiousness was not there. However, when Su Jingwen said Yimo was her friend, Yimo still caught the changes in Sister Fong's eyes. The good friend room was dimly lighted, and honestly didn't seem like a place to eat. It was more like a place for two lovers to have meaningful conversations. Yemo didn't really like this environment and immediately pulled the curtains open. The dusk sunlight shone in, and the room instantly became clearer. Jangwin, you can order first. I'll go now to prepare some tea. Sister Fong took out a menu and placed it on the table before turning to leave. Yemo thought to himself, they need the female owner of this place to make tea? Where are the waiters? Although seeing through Yemo's confusion, Su Jingwen said, Sister Fong is a master in the art of tea. Those who come to eat here are all regular customers, and usually, Sister Fong makes the tea herself. The menu is here. Pick your dishes. As Su Jingwen spoke, she passed the menu in her hands to Yemo. Yemo flicked through the menu. There weren't much variety, but the image of each dish was very attractive and exquisite. Why isn't there a price? Yemo found out that there was no price on his menu. Regardless of what dish it is, they are all 300 a dish, so there is no need for a price. Every regular customer knows about that. Su Jingwen smiled sweetly. Yemo phased for a moment, as he thought that a plate of celery cost 300 too, but he didn't say this. He wasn't wealthy, but that didn't mean other people were not. Yemo didn't know that the most expensive thing here wasn't the dishes. He wasn't too fussy about food, but Yemo knew Su Jingwen was wealthy. Since the prices were all the same, he ordered a few randomly. Yemo wasn't into tea, but this didn't mean he didn't understand tea. After drinking Sister Fong's tea, the aroma remained on the lips and tongue, making people have the urge to drink a second time. Seeing that Yemo seemed to like the tea here, Su Jingwen smiled faintly and asked, You are the master that sold me the charm last time, right? Su Jingwen's unexpected way of questioning was very effective usually, but it was useless to Yemo. He didn't expose anything in his mannerism and didn't show a very calm face. Instead, he asked with surprise, What charm master? I'm only a student. Look, this is my student ID. As he spoke, Yemo took out his student ID and showed Su Jingwen. Yemo, Ning Hai University, 05, Biology Specialization. He was a fourth-year university student. Su Jingwen returned the ID card to Yemo with disappointment. She didn't think that she got the wrong person. She saw that he was taken away at the entrance to Ning Hai University, but she didn't think he really was a university student. Su Jingwen, did you get the wrong person? You took me to such a high-class restaurant for food. I'm quite embarrassed. Although Yemo knew Su Jingwen wouldn't regret over a mere few $1,000s, he still needed to say this. It doesn't matter. You look very similar to my friend. Plus, even if I got the wrong person, it's not that important. The first meeting might be unfamiliar, but during the second meeting, we will be familiar, and we will know each other in the future, won't we? You're younger than me, so you can refer to me as Sister Jingwen. Calling me by my full name sounds a bit weird. Su Jingwen smiled once again. Yemo didn't give her a bad impression because Yemo was a handsome young man, and the eyes he looked at her with were very clear and didn't make her feel uncomfortable. Then Sister Jingwen, I'll benefit from you and enjoy this meal. Yemo wouldn't be reserved for the dishes brought to him, and he didn't feel bad for eating this without paying. He was sure that his spirit-cleansing charm that he sold last time saved Su Jingwen's mother, because he was confident of his charms, and he could tell from Su Jingwen's attitude towards him. Su Jingwen took out a name card and gave it to Yemo. This is my number. If those people still look for trouble with you, you can call me. Yemo took the card and thought inwardly, if it wasn't for you this time, there wouldn't be that much trouble. I probably won't be calling you after this meal. You are you, I am me. We wouldn't have anything to do with each other. Haha, then I'll take it. However, there's nothing I can help you with, Yemo said casually. Perhaps not now, but maybe sometimes. I'll be needing your help. Su Jingwen smiled charmingly as no one would know what she was thinking. Yemo blamed himself for talking too much. He didn't even have enough time to cultivate. The less the trivial things, the better. Su Jingwen suddenly felt that when she was with Yemo, things seemed peaceful and she didn't have any pressure. Chapter 18. Ning Qingshua's Plight. Chapter 18. Ning Qingshua's plight. Although it was also a medium-sized family, the Ning family of Beijing met its downfall after many years. With illness forcing the retirement of the old man Ning, the Ning family had become shakier. At this moment, the atmosphere in the Ning family was oppressive. Although it was a family meeting, there wasn't the slightest sense of joy or happiness. Will Qingxue, that girl, still not change her mind? After remaining silent some time, a 50-year-old or so man sitting at the top seat knocked the table and asked. He was the current head of the Ning family, Ning Zhongze, and the eldest son of the old man Ning. He was also the governor of the Beijing River District. With Beijing being such a huge international city, a district governor was already better received than some vice-state governors from other states. But in a place like Beijing, a district governor wasn't anything. With the old man Ning retiring and him being also in his 50s, district governor would be the final destination of his career if nothing magical happened. Big brother, it isn't up to her now. Third brother currently managed our Ning family medical material, and I think that he knows the current problem we are facing. Our original biggest supplier, the American Sika company, is being controlled by that businesswoman from the Song family, which is lethal to our Ning family. After father retired, I don't think our Ning family could do anything in the political field anymore. If our commercial properties receive a big hit again, I think our Ning family will be on the decline. Although Song Shaowen is promiscuous, his Song family is still a big family. If we have a marriage alliance with them, not only will our business would see an immediate success, but Big Brother might also have the possibility to advance in his career. The middle-aged man sitting by Ning Zhongze's right-hand side spoke quickly with an excited tone. Ning Zhongze sighed and waved his hand. Zhongwei, I understand what you mean. Although having a marriage alliance with the Song family is definitely beneficial to our Ning family, Song Shaowen cannot be relied upon. Sai, I think we should discuss this thing with third brother. After all, Qingxue is his daughter. Big brother, I think fourth brother is right. At this time, we've reached the life and death moment of our Ning family, and we're only asking Qingxue to marry into the Song family. It's nothing significant. I think Qingxue could understand, and so can third brother. Plus, Qingxue is taking care of the business in Beijing, so she should know. Can't she see the big picture? The person who agreed was the second brother Ning Zhongxiu, sitting on the left. Dad, second uncle, and fourth uncle's words are all true. I think that although Shaowen is a bit promiscuous, which young person isn't these days? Usually, these types of people change after getting married. This is for Qingxue's good as well. At least he is better than that paralyzed person in the Yi family. Plus, Shaowen has had feelings for Qingxue for a long time. He won't mistreat her, seeing that both his uncle's opinions were unanimous. Ning Zhongze's eldest son Ning Shili also confirmed. Ning Zhongze remained silent for a while before raising his head and saying, We'll do this. I'll talk to Zhongfei and Zhongshou, and I'll get Hueli to work on Qingxue. There are not a lot of days remaining before the 1st of November. Try to do the wedding in October. A youth sitting at the end opened his mouth, but seeing that the leader of the family had already spoken, he finally swallowed his words. He was the second son of Ning Zhongze, Ning Yang, and was the only one in the Ning family that didn't agree with this hasty decision of marriage. So, as soon as the family meeting finished, Ning Yang went straight for Ning Qingxue. Although after Ning Qingxue's public words last time, people in the outside world had thought of her being restrained by the Ning family, this was simply that Ning Qingxue didn't want to go out herself. Her personality was indifferent, and she didn't like going out. Ever since she was fired from her duties in the Ning family medical materials, she spent most of her time at home. Other than her only best friend Li Mumei, she barely saw anyone. Li Mumei was not only Ning Qingxue's assistant in the Ning family medical material, but also her best friend and her cousin. If there was anyone in the Ning family that Ning Qingxue could still get along with, it was her cousin Ning Yang. However, Ning Yang had a lot of things on his mind and hardly came to see her. But today, Ning Yang came over, and this gave Ning Qingxue a bad feeling. Brother Yang, long time no see. Li Mumei saw Ning Yang and immediately greeted. She and Ning Qingxue were talking about something. Ning Yang's face looked awful, but he didn't avoid the topic. Qingxue, your life is in your hands. I think if you can go abroad, I can help you. The future of a family is not to be earned through a woman. The primary purpose of Ning Yang coming here was to help Ning Qingxue escape because he was the only one who knew what sort of a person Song Shaowen was. After hearing Ning Yang's words, Ning Qingxue's face immediately became pale. No matter what she said publicly, she still couldn't escape the fate of being sold by her family. Qingxue, Li Mumei called out worriedly. The room settled into an uncomfortable silence. Ningyang knew that it would be tough even if he tried sending his cousin abroad. Plus, what use would it be leaving the country? She would ultimately be reeled back in by the family. Cousin, don't worry, I'll help you arrange it first in case we're out of time. Mumei, Qingxue is going to need your help. Ningyang stood up and left hurriedly. If Ning Qingxue wanted to go abroad, this had to be done as soon as possible. If his uncles learned about it, they would not let her go out. Seeing Ning Qingxue's wooden face, Li Mumei felt great sympathy for her. She and Qingxue were best friends. It was just because she was too beautiful that she didn't have freedom. Who didn't know what sort of person Song Shaoan was in the Beijing circle? He was juggling public affairs with multiple women and was photographed countless times doing so. If it weren't for the Song family's power and their authority in disguising such shameful truth, probably the whole world would have known already. This person also had a disgusting taste. He liked to give the girls he was bored of playing with to other people. There were countless girls in Beijing that he ruined. Once, there was a girl who was on a path to become a superstar who resisted Song Shaoan. She had both of her legs broken and was thrown into a brothel. Eventually, the girl was forced to suicide. So in the Beijing circle, he was called the demon. Qingxue, I may have a solution, but it would ruin your reputation and render you no longer desirable for such an awful hand in marriage. As Li Mumei spoke, she also seemed to realize that her idea wasn't really good and started to stutter. What is it? Do tell. Ning Qingxue stared at Li Mumei. No matter what idea it was, as long as she could get rid of Song Shaoan, she was willing to do it. Li Mumei sighed and said, that is, to use your shield again. You've said publicly that you're Yi Mo's woman already. Although everyone knows that this is your excuse, but if something really did happen between you and Yi Mo, then, seeing Ning Qingxue look at her in shock, Li Mumei knew she misunderstood and hurried to say, when I said something to happen between you two, I didn't mean it that way. You also know he is naturally that he can't do anything to you anyway. However, if you suddenly married him and lived with him together, and occasionally let a journalist take a picture of you and him on the same bed, then the Song family will refuse to take you in. Ning Qingxue's eyes suddenly brightened up, but remained silent. Li Mumei had been with her the longest, so she knew her intentions. Li Mumei said once again that Yi Mo is a typical son of the rich and he loves his face. Apparently, after you broke the marriage, he still wanted a girl in his class to be his girlfriend to cover his natural. But do you know how that girl replied to him? She asked him, young Master Yi, would you be able to get it on in bed with me? It was even said that Yi Mo fainted due to anger on the spot because he didn't think that his classmate who was originally so respectful towards him would suddenly treat him like that. This person is probably dumb and still hasn't come to the fact that he was kicked out of the Yi family. Besides, he must be subsisting on a tight budget. I have already asked someone to give him the 20 grand last time, and apparently, he accepted it without protest. If you give him some tens of $1,000s again, he would definitely do something that gives him face and money to spend. Ning Qingxue sighed, I don't really care about my reputation. It is long gone. It's just, would the Song family take their revenge on him? Chapter 19. The Girl at the Door of the Classroom. Chapter 19. The girl at the door of the classroom, Qingxue. I really don't know what to say about you, but the Song family is such a big family, and they will want to keep their image. So if you marry Yi Mo and something happens to him, anyone would relate that to the Song family. I don't think the Song family would do something that doesn't really benefit them. Li Mumei seemed to analyze the situation with experience. Ning Qingxue remained silent for a moment before nodding her head. Okay, I will have to owe him one more time. However, Li Mumei shook her head. Qingxue, you're wrong. This time you won't owe him. He will owe you. I can guarantee that Yi Mo's thoughts are different than yours. He would be glad to do so. How about this? Tomorrow is Jingwen's birthday, and we'll use this excuse to go to Ninghai. After Jingwen's birthday party, I'll go with you to Yi Mo and reveal our plan. Ning Qingxue was familiar with Su Jingwen. When she was still going to school, Su Jingwen was famously beautiful in Beijing. However, a few years before, something had happened to her mother and therefore had gone to Ninghai. However, Li Mumei was still very close friends with Su Jingwen. Yimo finally came to class after a long while, and now, he had already self-taught himself with nearly all the content of these few years of university. He only came today because Shirxiu invited him for food, which was mainly because Shirxiu got a few free vouchers for the school's restaurant. Since there was free food, he wanted Yimo to come as well. If Yimo had only one friend in Ninghai University, that would have been Shirxiu. Normally, when Yimo went to class, Shirxiu would sit next to him as he got along well with Yimo. It had been like this ever since Yimo went to Ninghai University and didn't change just because Yimo was kicked out of the Yi family. When Yimo recovered his consciousness the first time, he was awakened by Shirxiu, who also warned him not to make contact with Yin Yan. Later on, when Yimo was kicked out of the Yi family and had financial difficulties, he would try his best to help Yimo as much as he could. It could be said that, in Ninghai University, the only people who helped Yimo in the end were Wang Ying and Shirxiu. Wang Ying's help might be due to Yiling, but Shirxiu was Yimo's real friend. Yimo, this is Heartless Bing's class again. You are already on her bad side, and if you didn't come, it would have been okay. So when she teaches, don't say a word. If she sees you, she might want to trouble you again, Shirxiu said to Yimo carefully. Yimo smiled and patted Shirxiu's shoulder. I won't care about these narrow-hearted women. Don't worry, it won't affect you. I can stay quiet for a whole month, much less during a lesson in class. Shirxiu also smiled as he obviously didn't believe that Yimo could remain silent for a month. Who did you call narrow-hearted, Yimo? Someone paralyzed, like you could not possibly have the face to talk about others and even have the face to come to class? A very crisp girl voice interrupted Yimo's words. Yin Yin, what do you mean? Yimo wasn't talking about you. What right do you have to talk? Is it because you think Yimo can be bullied? Shirxiu was not happy about Yin Yan's behavior. Io, Shirxiu, you seem to have enough guts to yell. Yin Yan saw the goody-goody Shirxiu dared to yell at her, and immediately went on the defensive. However, Yimo pulled Shirxiu aside and said, why taking her seriously? Just pretend as if it was a harmless dog barking. Yimo, Yin Yan pointed at Yimo and was about to swear. Yimo sneered, and before Yin Yan could respond, he said, being ugly isn't your fault, but showing off your ugliness is your bad. Oh right, didn't you say last time I couldn't go in bed with you? I'm sorry, I'm not interested in a dinosaur like you. Yimo was avenging the former soul of the body. Yin Yan was too cocky. Yin Yan was originally going to start swearing, but she suddenly laughed. Yimo actually called her ugly. Although she wasn't the prettiest in the school, she was easily the most beautiful in the class, and she immediately fought back. I'm ugly? Yimo, you're blind. Open your eyes and look. Do you know someone prettier than me? Do you? If you do, then I'll admit that I'm ugly. If not, at this moment, a soft voice at the door of the classroom interrupted her. Yimo, come out. I've come looking for you a few times already, but I couldn't find you. Almost everyone looked towards the doorway, and all the male students' eyes immediately stared dead straight. A stunningly beautiful girl stood at the doorway. This girl at the door was like a flower that rose from the water. There were no signs of makeup. With shapely eyebrows and her faint smile and beautiful face, you didn't even need to look at her curvaceous body to know that she was a rare beauty. If this girl were a Ninghai University student, then the prettiest girl in the university wouldn't be Su Mei, but the girl in front of their eyes. Yin Yin was like a chicken grabbed by its neck. Her rambling suddenly stopped. She was just saying that Yimo didn't know a woman prettier than her, and then immediately came a woman that was far above her league. Even worse, this woman was calling out to Yimo. Yimo stared coldly once at Yin Yin. He didn't need to take this woman seriously and didn't want to be affiliated with her in the future. Jingwen, is there something up? Yimo didn't think that Su Jingwen actually came to the classroom to find him. From her words, it sounded like this wasn't the first or second time she was doing this. Seeing that Yimo didn't call her sister Jingwen but just called her Jingwen, Su Jingwen rolled her eyes but didn't say a word. Due to her father, Su Jingwen had a skewed view towards Min. However, she was a lot less guarded around Yimo. Although Yimo wasn't the person she was looking for, he resembled that person. On top of that, Yimo looked at her with clear eyes and didn't have any vulgar intents. He was easy to read, just like an open book. Plus, Yimo was a student, and all these factors combined made Su Jingwen have a good impression of Yimo. Can I come looking for you when nothing is up? Do you have time? How about we talk outside? Su Jingwen smiled and said. Yimo nodded helplessly. He knew that free food wasn't to be earned so easily. He needed to be careful accepting offers next time. Eating one meal meant that he had to take a shift for someone till midnight, and now Su Jingwen came looking for him. He thought about it and just stood at the doorway, telling Xiao not to wait for him tonight. Let's go. Just when Yimo said that to Su Jingwen, he saw the English teacher Yun Bing walk in with a few textbooks. Her face was full of disgust when she saw Yimo leave the classroom, but when she looked at Su Jingwen, her face had a sliver of surprise which turned into pity. Of course, Yimo also saw Yun Bin, but he didn't care about his grades, so he couldn't care less what this woman did. It didn't matter even if she failed him. Rate translation quality. Chapter 20. Invitation. Chapter 20. Invitation. Yimo. I want to ask for your help. Su Jingwen's tone sounded like she was embarrassed. Yimo thought to himself, I knew this was going to happen. However, his impression of Su Jingwen wasn't bad. From the first time when he saw her desperate to save her mom, he knew this woman was someone worth helping. Besides, although he went to the police station because of her last time, she was just acting out of goodwill. Tell me, if I can help you, and if it doesn't take a long time, I will definitely do my best to assist you. It is my honor to help a beautiful lady, Yimo smiled. Actually, Yimo, you look nice when you smile. You need to smile more. Su Jingwen suddenly popped up with an entirely irrelevant sentence. Yimo became flustered for a bit. Although he understood people and how things worked in his new reincarnated surroundings, there was a barrier in the depth of his heart. When he entered the police station last time, this defense grew stronger. He was scared that his secrets would be leaked and caused him to be in danger. Therefore, he was usually cold and reserved when he was around people. Now when he heard Su Jingwen say this, he felt that he seemed to be a bit too careful. As long as he didn't expose his real secret, he wouldn't need to be so careful. Yimo, I've looked you up. Su Jingwen stopped and subtly looked at Yimo's expression. Seeing that his face was normal, she gasped a sigh of relief and continued. I have a cousin who is also in Ninghai University. Her name is Su Mei. I've heard about you from her. Do you have some misunderstanding with her? Her personality is a bit arrogant, but she isn't a bad person. Never mind, let's not talk about her. I don't understand her that well either. Su Jingwen stuttered for a long while but still couldn't finish her sentence. In fact, Su Mei told Su Jingwen that Yimo didn't know how to handle delicate situations. But Su Jingwen didn't take her words seriously at all. She was very clear what sort of a person Su Mei was. The reason she talked about Su Mei was that she didn't want Yimo to give up on himself. She still wanted to say that she knows someone very powerful who can even cure a person in a vegetative state. If she could find this person, then perhaps his problem would be cured too. However, she wasn't able to say this. After all, although she was a bit familiar with Yimo, it wasn't to the degree where they could say anything. They were just ordinary friends. Plus, how awkward would it be for a girl to say those words? Yimo understood Su Jingwen's meanings. Since she was Su Mei's cousin, it meant that she already knew about him. It was normal for her to be unable to express those words. He waved his hand to stop Su Jingwen from continuing. Actually, I'm living quite happily, and there isn't anything troubling me. Don't worry about it. Still, thank you for your concern. Okay, now let's talk about what I can help you with. Su Jingwen had a faint blush on her face and thought. Although Yimo's expression said that he really didn't care about his condition, was he really thinking that way and didn't care about it at all? However, Su Jingwen secretly made up her mind that if she met the person who sold the charms, she would ask if she could buy a charm that could cure Yimo. Although she hadn't known Yemo for long, she felt very comfortable being with him. Not only was Yemo handsome, but his personality was quite friendly and open. He didn't make her feel the slightest pressure. This was the reason she was willing to help Yemo. Today is my birthday, and due to family reasons, I haven't had a happy birthday for many years. I want to invite you to come to my birthday party tomorrow night. I wonder if you would be willing to come? What she really meant to say was that she needed a male partner for a dance, but she hadn't found the suitable person. Asking this innocent Yemo to help her out was perfect for this. Yemo became dazed, and some warmness rose in his heart. Su Jingwen knew that he was the abandoned son of the Yi family, and yet she still invited him. This showed that in her heart, she had the same thought as Xiao, treating him as a true friend without exterior motives. Of course I would be willing to. Thank you for inviting me to your birthday party. I'll come for sure. Yemo agreed happily. Su Jingwen gave an invitation to Yemo and said, I won't have the time to call you that night, but it is at 6 p.m. at Yuan private place, and the address is on top. I need to go to the airport to pick up my friends, so I'll see you tomorrow night. Seeing Su Jingwen's Mercedes disappear, he thought that if he wanted to go to her birthday party, he needed a gift for her. He couldn't go empty-handed. Although he had some money on him, Yemo wasn't an idiot. He needed to save the money for cultivation. At last, Yemo bought a very ordinary jade from the market and made it into a magical jade bracelet artifact. Although it was a bracelet, there were only 6 pea-sized beads of jade on it. They were sculpted into circular shape from the jade Yemo bought and made into a magical defensive artifact. Although this magical defensive artifact didn't even have a level, it could still defend against some simple attacks. However, there were only 6 jade beads on this bracelet. Each time it defended against an attack, it would damage a jade bead. Although it didn't look very refined, it was practical and helpful. With Yemo's current ability, he could only finish 6. Hopefully, Su Jingwen would not need a bead from this bracelet in her whole lifetime. For someone as rich as Su Jingwen, a few $100s of jade was nothing to her. The bracelet Yemo was going to give looked a little ugly, and she might not even wear it. However, regardless of whether she was going to wear it or not, Yemo wouldn't mention the magic enclosed in this artifact. When he returned to his home, Suwei still hadn't come back. Yemo cared for his flowers and grass a little. There was a month before he might be able to harvest the seeds of silver heartgrass. After finishing these, Yemo then went toward Yuan private place in high spirits. Ninghai Zhongqiao Airport. Su Jingwen saw Li Mumei, but there was a gorgeous girl beside Li Mumei who even rendered some sort of spiritual sense. Su Jingwen was wondering who was this girl. If it weren't for the faint worry on her face, she would have taken her as a goddess from out of this universe. Su Jingwen was not the only person attracted by Ning Qingshue's beauty, and when Su Jingwen walked over, many people set their eyes on the 2 women and thought, these 2 women are breathtaking. In comparison, Li Mumei, who was usually considered beautiful, could only be viewed as normal. Jingwen, oh happy birthday, I traveled especially to celebrate with you. Li Mumei saw Su Jingwen, who was walking over here from a distance, and started to speak animatedly. Mumei, I'm so happy that you can come to Ninghai. And this is... Su Jingwen immediately grabbed Li Mumei's hands and gushed excitedly. Jingwen, hello. I'm Mumei's cousin Ning Qingxue. I heard about you, and I wish you a happy birthday. Ning Qingxue smiled and said, thank you. So you are Qingxue, you really are pretty. No wonder they say you are the prettiest lady in Beijing. Even I'm a bit entranced. Su Jingwen didn't think that the girl in front of her was Ning Qingxue, but when she saw Ning Qingxue's somewhat dim eyes, she immediately thought of Yemo and stopped talking. Li Mumei seemed to notice the atmosphere was a bit cold and hurried to say, Jiangwen, Qingxue, there are a lot of people staring at us. We should go quickly. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.